Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching first part of What If Naruto's Uzumaki genetics were enhanced by Kurama. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
In a remote cave close to Konoha, it hurts. That's what one Kushina Uzumaki, the Kyuubi's current host, cried out at the time she was giving birth to Naruto, her son. Calm down, Kushina. Yelling isn't going to make it go any faster, it's just going to alert everyone in a 5-mile radius that you're giving birth. Kurama, please stop talking before I interrupt you once more. This hurts more than you can idea. It wouldn't be hurting this much if you hadn't improved his Uzumaki bloodline. Despite having almost limitless power, the Kyuubi didn't want to be chained up again, so it remained silent as it remembered how this pain was partly its fault. Return without jutsu, in a location that is unrelated to the plot. Kushina, I would like to discuss something with you and Minato-san later. Alright. Although Kurama and Kushina didn't communicate much unless it was absolutely necessary, they still had enough respect for one another to be on a first-name basis as a result. When Kurama did want to speak with Kushina or Minato, they knew it was crucial. In the mindscape of Kushina, the man with the bright yellow spiky hair asked, "So what did you want to talk to us about, Kurama-san?" "Yeah. Usually you don't want to talk to us much unless it's important." "It's about your son." On the edge of panic, Kushina exclaimed, "What, is something wrong with Naruto-chan?" "What is it?" She and Minato already loved him, despite the fact that she had only been carrying him for a few months. Minato calmly interrupted his wife to prevent her from getting into a heated argument, saying, "Calm down, Kushina-chan. I'm sure if it was something like that, Kurama-san would have taken care of it himself." "Indeed, if it was something like that, I would have taken care of it myself without informing you, as there would be no need. This is something of a more personal choice." "Oh, well, what is it?" "Your child will have a very weak Uzumaki bloodline." Kushina was concerned about her nearly extinct clan, but she didn't worry about it all that much. Her status as a Jinchuriki placed a premium on her ongoing mental health, which having several husbands could easily disturb. She could simply have another child and plan to gradually re-establish the Uzumaki clan in time instead of being required to participate in the Clan Restoration Act. "I'm sorry, but I don't really understand why that would be a problem. I wasn't finished. Having a weaker version of their bloodline, his chakra won't be potent enough to counteract my ambient chakra running through Kushina's body. Because of this, he will most likely have whisker marks." Something that made them pause was that nearly none of the Jinchuriki had any physical characteristics that would have allowed them to be identified, such as facial markings, even though many of them are endowed with some abilities by their Biju without the need to directly tap into their chakra. The Gold and Silver brothers were responsible for the whisker marks connected to the Kyuubi's chakra. Two Kumo shinobi, Ginkaku and Kinkaku, who were brothers in Gold and Silver, attempted to steal the Kyuubi for Kumo. Despite being eaten, they managed to survive by consuming the stomach meat of the Kyuubi. They also absorbed some of his chakra in the process, which resulted in the formation of whisker marks on their cheeks and the turning of their hair tips to black. As a result, some of the corrosive effects of the Kyuubi's chakra caused a whisker mark to form on their cheeks, which became associated with the chakra. The strong chakra of the Uzumakis was able to withstand the corrosive qualities of the Kyuubi's chakra, which is why Uzumaki Mito and Kushina lacked any. There wouldn't be any consistent physical indicators, but they would form if they were able to access enough of its chakra. Although the Hokage's son would undoubtedly be closely watched, there was no assurance that someone couldn't slink through to try to acquire the Uzumaki bloodline. Kushina-chan. That would be like painting a target on Naruto's back. It had happened once before. "I know, Minato-kun. But what do we do? That is why I called you down here." Uncertain of what they could do in this circumstance, Minato questioned, "What do you mean, Kurama-san?" "Due to having been sealed in two Uzumakis now, I have a decent idea of their genetic makeup. I could manipulate your child's genetic structure so that his Uzumaki genes would become dominant. However, that would open up a new host of problems." "What do you mean, Kurama? Wouldn't it just cause his chakra to become stronger?" replied Kushina. She could see why the Kyuubi wouldn't change on their own, but she couldn't see what other issues it would lead to. No, Minato's praise as a genius wasn't undeserved. It would also cause his physical appearance to change. His chakra would become stronger, but his hair would turn red. Am I right? He thought, his mind already in motion. Ignoring Kushina's irate squawk, Kyuubi said, "In fact, you once again demonstrate your position as the relationship's brains." Minato continued where he left off. Minato frowned, recalling the circumstances that led to Kushina's near abduction, and said, "That means Kumo might try to kidnap Naruto for their bloodline program, like what they tried to do for you, Kushina-chan." As Kushina and Minato pondered what this meant, there was silence. "There's no contest. Although Naruto's physical characteristics would make him a target for Kumo, his whisker marks would make him a target for any village that craves power and thinks he possesses the Kyuubi. Furthermore, if an enemy village managed to capture Naruto and discover that he lacked the Kyuubi, they might conclude that Kushina was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. As much as I don't like it, I agree with Minato on this point. Do it. Very well, consider this my baby shower present to you too. Kurama grinned and added, almost as an afterthought, as Kushina and Minato started to disappear from the mindscape. Ah yes, by the way, this will probably make childbirth even more painful than it already would be because of my chakra also being in the womb, just for your information. In reality, Kurama, end no jutsu flashback. Although Kurama wasn't attempting to break out, the seal was still collapsing, so Minato nervously asked, do you think she'll be okay? Obviously, a man would die from this kind of pain, cried Sarutobi Bawako. However, women are powerful. Come on, you can do it, Kushina. Naruto. The final Anbu fell as a masked man slipped through the cave's walls, but those inside were unaware of it. Oh, the head is visible to me. In an attempt to console Kushina, Bawako said, just a little more, Kushina. As its perch on a miniature moon started to fall apart, the Kyuubi said from inside the seal, it's okay, Kushina, you're almost done. Come on, Naruto. As he attempted to fix the seal, Minato said. Bawako quickly wrapped the newborn Naruto as she introduced Kushina and Minato to their new son while the room echoed with cries. Bawako smiled tenderly and said, it's a healthy boy. I'm a father, haha. With tears streaming down his face, Minato uttered those words. After giving birth, Kushina whispered, Naruto, I finally get to see you. Well, it seems to have worked. It's not often that you alter a human's genetic composition. No whisker marks and a nice tuft of red hair, the Kyuubi said from inside the seal, its voice full of pride. Oh, all right, Kushina, you can now unwind. Kurama, please wait while I fix the seal. Bawako's cries as she hit the ground stopped Minato in his tracks as he was fixing the seal, and when he turned around, he saw his newborn son in the arms of a man wearing a black cloak and a mask, with one hand covering the infant's face. Yondiami Hokage Minato Namikaze, step away from the host, or your son dies at the ripe old age of 1 minute. As Minato was about to move, he thought, how did he slip through the barrier and what happened to the Anbu stationed outside? Who on earth is he? He did his homework and put us in an extremely compromising position, the Kyuubi thought as it did its best to re-establish the seal, while his wife groaned in agony to his side as she felt the seal start to destabilize. As a kunai slipped into his hand, the masked man commanded, get away from the host, or do you not care what happens to the brat? Hold on, relax. As he looked for a way to buy some time, Minato said. Minato needs to be calmed down by you. I'm completely at ease right now. The masked man threw Naruto into the air and attempted to stab him with a kunai because Minato was motionless, but Minato sped past him and caught the infant in midair before he could do so. The sound of hissing came from the blanket's bottom, as expected of the yellow flash, but what about the next one? With the blanket in one hand and the baby in the other, the yellow flashing vanished. Minato Naruto, in one of the designated safe houses of Minato. Fortunately, Naruto was unharmed when a small house in the forest exploded, throwing a man who was protecting a baby out of the way. Pulling a piece of wood from his shin, he grunted. Minato gritted his teeth and teleported to the next closest safe house to make sure Naruto was safe. He forced me to use the Hiraishin after Kushina and Kurama, and now I'm not with them, Minato said. In a remote clearing, as she tried to wait for Minato to arrive, Kushina said, what do you want? She was hung above a smaller rock in a lake, her seal, stretched from her body, wrapped around 4 stone pillars surrounding the rock. To take the Kyuubi from you and destroy Konoha. What, Kushina? This man has the Sharingan. He is going to take me from you. There is nothing we can do at this point, but if you were to willingly release the seal, it would give you some more time to live and give me one shot at ending him. All right, but after this, you're probably going to be sealed into Naruto. The markings for Minato's Hiraishin, which allowed for him to teleport to their location, were incorporated into your seal. I know, but that is still better than being under this one's control. Can you make me a promise? That also implies that Minato will most likely have to seal you in Naruto. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Kushina questioned Kurama. Minato is always protecting you. What? Assure me that you will take care of Naruto while I'm away. However, I've managed to get him away from you now. The man wearing the mask gloated as his Sharingan emerged through the mosque's single eyehole. I promise. Furthermore, the seal is weakened after you gave birth. Do you know how long I've waited for this brief moment? For the first time in nearly a century, The Kyuubi was released to the earth and the ground trembled. As he tucked young Naruto into a bed, Minato remarked, "You'll be safe here." "Perish." Kurama swung his claw at the man in the mask and roared. "Just wait here a bit, Naruto." The masked man's position was crushed by the Kyuubi's blow, and the ground trembled. Something isn't right. The masked man appeared to phase out of Kurama's grasp as he was almost online. "How intriguing, huh? I was informed that the Kyuubi was a hateful, illogical creature," drawled the masked man almost lazily as he made eye contact with the Kyuubi. "Oh well, it doesn't matter." "Dude." The Kyuubi's eyes transformed from their normal shape into a Sharingan before their pupils fully dilated, and it cried out, "Kushina, get away." As the hypnotized Kyuubi turned around and got ready to crush Kushina, the masked man remarked, "Just now the Kyuubi tried to defend you, and now I will use him to kill you. I have to go save your mom." Kushina closed her eyes as the Kyuubi's claw drew closer, contemplating her newborn child who would have to bear the responsibility of becoming the Kyuubi's next Jinchuriki, Naruto. But when she opened her eyes once more, she found herself in her husband's arms on a cliffside tree rather than covered in bloody paste on the ground. As he got ready to go to Konoha, the man in the mask muttered, "It seems like you still have the flash, but it's still too late." "Minato, are you okay? Is Naruto okay?" Kushina felt her life slowly slipping away from her, and she gasped out. "Yeah, he's all right, he's in a safe place now," Minato said, turning to glare at the hypnotized Kyuubi and the man in the mask. "Minato, you have to stop that man and Kurama, he's heading for Konoha." As he leapt back to the safe house where he had left Naruto, Minato said nothing. He teleported again. "It doesn't matter, we now head for Konoha." Where Minato left Naruto, in the safe house. "Why?" When Kushina saw where Minato had taken her, she inquired. Even though Kushina felt his own words sounded hollow, Minato reassured him, "It's fine, you're with Naruto now." "Naruto." Kushina pressed her forehead against his and sobbed. Minato clenched his fist, ready to go face the man in the mask, while he watched his wife weep as she slowly passed away. "Minato, one last thing before you leave. Kurama had one chance to attack the masked man after being freed from the seal, but the attack phased right through him. It appears that he must turn tangible in order to transport something. I believe it to be a form of space-time jutsu. I get it, I'll be right back, Minato, thank you." Line break. 5-year-old Uchiha Itachi was sitting on his home's patio with his younger brother, Uchiha Sasuke, when Sasuke started crying and a sense of dread overcame them both. "Sass your big brother, I will always protect you, no matter what, don't cry, Sasuke." Two individuals, 13-year-old Hitaki Kakashi and Might Guy, were engaged in a serious conversation on the streets of Konoha. "Maybe today we could just make a decision by rock, paper, scissors." Hitaki, who had white hair, drew lead. "Again, not that? For once, can't we have a more youthful battle?" The young Might Guy screamed at the top of his lungs, "Dare I say it? Hey Guy, are you experiencing any strange feelings? It feels cold in the air." The aged third Hokage, who was smoking a pipe, was examining some documents when he detected the chakra of the Kyuubi. "It's not possible. The night that would go down in history as the day of the Kyuubi attack started when the masked man, disguised as an ally, knelt down. Jutsu no Kachiyose. The Kyuubi suddenly materialized in Konoha, roared with might, and started destroying everything in its path. Line break. Hokage Sama Sandame. An Anbu showed signs of panic. The Kyuubi. The village is suddenly filled with the Kyuubi. Sarutobi Hiruzen, formerly known as the god of shinobi, jumped right in and assumed command while wearing his black battle armor. "I know, I'll see to that. You all defend the weak and defenseless." "Yes, sir." Kurama Dono, are you being controlled or did you break the seal on your own initiative? Backward the mindscape of Kushina in her mindscape, the third and fourth Hokage stood alongside the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, who had called to inform them of a crucial development. Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato Namikaze, and Kushina Uzumaki, what I am about to tell you is something I have only willingly admitted to 3 others who were in turn your first and second Hokages in my previous Jinchuriki. The 3 individuals in question exchanged glances with one another. This must have been a fairly significant secret for only 3 other people to be aware of. The reason you receive little to no fuss from me being sealed inside you is because it is something I myself asked for. They were taken aback. Why would a being with the Kyuubi's level of power desire to be sealed? While fighting your first Hokage, it was a little known fact that Madara used his Sharingan to control me. During the Battle of the End, where Uchiha Madara, Kurama spat out the name almost as if it were poison. I asked to be sealed inside your Shodem's wife because I could sense her strong chakra and knew that my own wouldn't hurt her. As there is a clan of people with the cursed eyes, it was advantageous to both parties. I would never again be under the influence of those damned eyes, and she would be able to summon my chakra when she needed it. The Kyuubi went on, allowing them a minute to possess this. Observe my eyes. I take it that you can see that they are vertical slits? When I am under the influence of Uchiha, my eyes either become round and dilated like you humans, or there is a pattern of a Sharingan, he added after getting a round of nods. End flashback. Before he could move, a hostile presence appeared behind him. How did it come to this? Minato thought as he prepared to subdue the Kyuubi. One moment, it seemed like his family would have a picture-perfect ending, but the next, his wife was dying. His son would have to be made into the next Kyuubi Jinchuriki because no one other than someone with Uzumaki could handle getting the Kyuubi sealed within them, and they had a serious information leak. He saw his attack go through the man and spun around, slashing out with his Hiraishin Kunai. As the masked man grabbed Minato's hand, he thought, that must be the intangibility ability Kushina warned me about. Since he turned tangible, that must mean he's planning to transport me, Minato thought. Minato responded immediately and teleported as the area surrounding the masked man's eyehole warped. I'll have to suck him in the moment I touch him because he jumped again. Close to the demolished safe house, as he got ready for the masked man to arrive, the Yondaime Hokage said, he knows I am one of the only people who could seal the Kyuubi, that's why he's coming for me. Just seconds after Minato completed his preparations, the masked man appeared in a whirling whirlpool. Who are you? Not many people could have overcome our barriers and possessed such advanced space-time jutsu, let alone overcome the Sandyame's personal Anbu like they were brand new. Genin Minato moved into a fighting stance and asked. Then again, I guess it doesn't really matter who you are, but then the question would be why you're attacking Konoha. According to the masked man, I guess you could say it was on a whim and for a plan. He then lowered his hood to reveal a battle chain fastened to his wrists. But I will say it was for war, and through that war piece. For a whim and for a plan, that means either that he had a plan for the Kyuubi and randomly attacked Konoha, or that he had a plan that involved weakening Konoha and using the Kyuubi as the means to get there. It's hopeless F. The masked man could only utter this before a kunai passed through his mind. Retaliation for my family is just the icing on the cake. It doesn't matter, I'll end him to remove a threat to Konoha anyway. While strength and stamina may be equally important in a full-on battle without armor or weapons, speed is one of the most crucial elements of combat. However, neither of those factors can help you when a knife slits your throat. Although the Yondaime may not possess the Sandame's jutsu arsenal or the Shodem and Nidaime's respectively destructive wood and water ninjutsu power, their speed, which is unmatched in the elemental nations, their sealing abilities, including their renowned Hiraishin, which allowed them to teleport instantly to a special seal that they could tag on people or objects, and their Rasengan, an original jutsu that allowed them to grind through any defense. All of these factors combined to make the Yondaime an almost unstoppable force in combat and the first shinobi to be promoted to an SS rank in the bingo book and given a flee on sight order. The masked man, also known as Tobi, Madara, or whatever the hell he wanted to be called, was living through this. As he deflected another knife blow to his neck as a kunai went through him, Tobi thought, shit, I have to leave this place, even though I have no idea what this seal is doing. The seal that Tobi was referring to earlier was a seal that was spread out on the ground and that Minato had prepared before Tobi arrived. In essence, it interfered with his space-time jutsu, preventing him from simply turning intangible whenever the Yondaime lunged at him, though it didn't stop it entirely. Right now, he was starting to feel like a cornered rat, and the kunai that was spread out around the seal allowed Minato to teleport to him whenever he approached the boundary, and when he attempted to simply suck himself into his own dimension, he was smacked down before he could finish moving. Thus far, he has managed to avoid any fatal wounds and being tagged, but it was only a matter of time. As he sliced at Tobi with one arm before finally tagging him with the other, Minato thought, this is taking too long. There, he put a contract seal on Tobi and used a Rasengan to smash him into the ground after teleporting behind him. Tobi thought, shit, the Kyuubi, as the Rasengan exploded, leaving the ground cratered and dust flying everywhere. In Konoha, the Leaf Ninja were fighting the Kyuubi with great effort, but it wasn't for nothing that it was dubbed the strongest of the Biju. Hundreds had already perished at its claws, and Konoha's destruction appeared all but certain when the Kyuubi jerked as though it had been hit by something enormous, and all of the Konoha ninja saw it and jumped back outside of the city's walls before it raised one clawed hand and grabbed its head. With Tobi and Minato, a figure with its arm leapt out as the dust started to clear, landing on a rock protruding from the now destroyed ground. It turned out to be a critically injured and panting Toby. Ha, 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 shit, I still can't compete with Sensei despite all the training Madara gave me. That last attack, if the Rasengan hadn't broken the seal and if I hadn't rendered myself intangible before that Rasengan exploded, Toby thought as he turned to face Konoha. The space surrounding Toba's mask started to swell and suck him in, dripping blood. Going for the Kyuubi would be suicide in my current state. You won this battle, Sensei. But I'll return for the spoils because I still won the war. In Konoha. Kushiyose, destroyer of food carts. Gamabunta flattened the Kyuubi after suddenly showing up out of nowhere. The Konoha ninja all felt hopeful again after seeing the Toad boss. Yandaime-sama is here. Yandaime-sama has arrived to halt the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi vanished almost as quickly as Gamabunta did. Minato, who had appeared on top of the Toad boss's head, leapt to his feet, gave Sarutobi a scroll, and then vanished. The Sandaime opened the scroll, scanning it out of curiosity before his eyes widened and the scroll began to burn. Sarutobi gritted his teeth, found Minato's chakra signature, and raced after him, wondering what the scroll held. Following birth, a masked man wearing Sharingan attacked. Kyuubi was released. Remove the man in the mask. Kyuubi's ceiling. Look after my son. The distance from Konoha is miles. My head is pounding. URG, I'm guessing you beat the man with the mask. I'm almost out of chakra. Yeah, ha. I need to put up a barrier so no one interferes. With chains flying out of her back and forming a makeshift barrier, Kushina uttered the words, "Let me, I still have plenty of chakra." As Minato called forth a ceremonial pedestal, the Kyuubi remarked, "I assume you intend to seal me in the child." Hold on, that is the dead demon seal of the Hake Shiki Fuin. 8 trigrams. If you use that, you'll die. Kushina cried out. Minato, what are you doing? You have no justification for using that seal. The Kyuubi expressed the same level of surprise as Kushina. As he went through seals, Minato explained, there is a reason. First is that I don't plan on just making this a seal. I wouldn't have needed to seal half of your chakra in the Death God with me if Naruto hadn't been born with the Uzumaki bloodline, but since he was, I don't need to. The seal will dilute your chakra to prevent it from accidentally damaging Naruto's undeveloped coils, but it will function as a gate once it is released and Naruto is able to handle your undiluted chakra. It will enable you and Naruto to use a form that is far more potent than a mere full possession. Wait, why would he need that? I thought you defeated the Masked Man. As he completed the final seal and called forth the Death God to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto, Minato remarked, I did, but I couldn't finish him. I realized 2 things today. The Masked Man who attacked you. He will bring catastrophe upon us, and this child is the one who will stop him. Any final remarks? I want you to assist him in controlling the Kyuubi's chakra, but that will be a long way off after I use the Shiki Fuin. I'll seal the remaining parts of your and my chakra in Naruto so we can meet him when he's older. Naruto, don't be a picky eater. Eat heartily, so you grow up big and strong. Take a bath every day and keep warm. Make sure you get enough sleep. Make friends, true friends you can really trust. And as for women, don't fall for a strange one. Find a woman like your mom, and don't become a pervert like Jiraiya. Naruto, you will face many painful times and hard times, but just be yourself, and have your dreams and the confidence to make those dreams come true. I really wish I could be there, to teach you so many more things. I really wish I could be with you longer. I love you. Before he turned to face the Kyuubi, Minato remarked, Naruto, as your father, I'll just second everything your mom said. You'll be there to watch him for us, right? You're like a godparent, aren't you? No Kurama. Yes, I will keep an eye on him. However, would I be considered his godmother since that pervert sensei of yours is his godfather? Kurama grinned and joked. Yeah, I suppose it would. Okay, are you prepared, Kushina, Kurama? Yeah, yes. Fuin, a boy with blue eyes and spiky, bright red hair, was playing by himself in the forest on a sunny day in Konohagakure no Sato. This boy was Naruto Uzumaki. Since the people at the orphanage weren't very nice to him, he usually liked to be left alone. Sure, he could just jump around and make a lot of noise so that people would look at him, but there was this funny voice in the back of his head that told him not to. Granted, he couldn't really hear the voice very well, but he understood it was basically telling him drawing attention to himself would be a bad idea. It was pretty easy to avoid people because he could, in his own words, feel this weird feeling where people were. Some people felt really big, like the old man in the funny hat, who was nice to him, or that man with the white spiky hair who sometimes followed him around. When he asked the old man in the funny hat about him, he said that the person was a friend of his parents, and while he couldn't take care of him, the man wanted to make sure he was safe. But everyone felt different in some way. There were other people who followed him, but once the man with the spiky white hair got to them, the ether went away or disappeared. Thinking about it, there weren't any other people who had as big a feeling as those two in the entire village, and there was another person with a big feeling coming into the village. It was about that time of day, and Kakashi Hatake couldn't help but smile when he saw his sensei's son scamper off into the foliage. The boy was just in his comfort zone, and if he was a perfect replica of either Kushina Ne or either sensei, Kakashi didn't think he could look at him without feeling the overwhelming guilt that anchored him to the memorial stone every day. Speaking of which, it was about that time of day. The White Fang's son shunshined to the memorial stone, creating a shadow clone to protect his sensei's legacy. The day was significant because Kumogakure sent an ambassador to Konoha to try to negotiate a peace treaty, but many of the higher-ranking shinobi, including the Hokage, were suspicious of him because they still remembered the failed kidnapping of Uzumaki Kushina years ago, and they wouldn't rule out Kumo trying again, especially with her orphaned son running around. Really, who else in Konoha has that bright red hair? Right outside the Hyuga compound at night. While many would find it disgusting to subject innocent young girls to such a thing, Kumo didn't care as long as it gave them more power. Yasaka Hattori stopped to catch his breath and caught a glimpse of bright red hair just before it vanished into the bushes. A figure darted out of the Hyuga compound carrying a black bag the size of a small child. Yasaka smiled, almost not believing how easy this was. While he was sent under the guise of negotiating a peace treaty, his true purpose was to kidnap the Hyuga heiress for Kumo's bloodline program. When Naruto felt the new signature that had entered the village today, he was playing in the forest just outside the Hyuga compound. Strangely, there was another, much smaller signature with it, so he decided to investigate. He hopped through the bushes until he saw the person carrying a child-sized black bag, and assuming that the second signature was coming from that bag, he leapt off to warn the man with the spiky white hair who was nearby. As he chased after our protagonist, Yasaka thought, "Shit, I can't let that brat warn the village's security." The Kumo Jonin managed to grab the child by the hem of his shirt before bursting into a clearing with an unusual stone. Wait, bright red hair, massive chakra reserves for his age, holy shit. This kid is the last Uzumaki. Yasaka exclaimed, grinning maniacally as he ignored the children's wriggling and considered the reward he would receive for this. Yasaka had finally caught up to the child and had a good look at him and felt his chakra signature. Though rare, bright red hair wasn't limited to Uzumakis. All those with the Uzumaki special chakra had bright red hair. Kumo heard about the Kyuubi attack. Like almost every other village, after some investigation, it was discovered that Kushina Uzumaki had died, but there were rumors of a child with bright red hair and enormous chakra reserves running around after the Kyuubi attack. The civilians all assumed it was the demon reincarnated, but the people at Kumo knew better. This is ideal. I'll be set for life when I bring you and the Hyuga girl back to Kumo for their bloodline program. Yasaka was about to knock the still wriggling child out when he felt a prick on the back of his neck and realized that all that was there was darkness. As he completed tying up the Kumo nin who attempted to kidnap the Hyuga heiress and his sensei's son, Kakashi sighed. Hiyashi, who was just now coming to pick up Hinata, would have likely caught and killed the nin, but the fact that he pursued Naruto meant three things. First, Kumo was aware that Kushina Ne had a son who was descended from the Uzumaki family. 2. The Hyuga heiress was Naruto's primary target at the time the nin was pursuing him. 3. And most importantly, Konoha now had a bargaining chip. The treaty would have allowed Kumo to demand reparations even if the nin had been killed, even though he was attempting to kidnap the heiress. However, since they had the man alive and caught him trying to kidnap the heirs of two clans, not that either of them knew that yet, there was nothing Kumo could demand legally, and Konoha now had the upper hand. In an attempt to soothe the red-haired boy who was clinging to his leg, he turned around and gave him a gentle pat on the head. "Don't worry, Naruto, the bad man can't hurt you now." While Naruto wasn't treated very well in the village, nobody actually ever raised a hand against him, fearing the wrath of those who cared deeply for him due to the fact that they had connected the dots and figured out Naruto was Kushina and Minato's child. On that note, with the attempted kidnapping, one of the major clans of Konoha could probably demand to adopt him under the pretense of protecting him from future kidnappings. Kakashi knew for a fact that the Uchiha clan was trying to adopt him due to Kushina and Mikoto being very close and Fugaku actually being Minato's cousin twice removed. A fact very few people knew. The only reason Kakashi knew is because Fugaku actually approached him to try to get his support to adopt Naruto, feeling he owed his distant cousin at least that. Kakashi himself couldn't adopt Naruto because he was only 16 and was in Anbu, but he did give Fugaku his blessing even though it didn't really matter at the moment due to the civilian council trying to cock-block them at every turn. Kakashi took Naruto's hand and said, "Okay, let's go to the old man now." Given how he was treated in the orphanage, Naruto's voice sounded as though he hadn't used it in days when he said, "Oh, hold on." Naruto cautiously approached the girl who was hiding behind him and held out his hand, assuming that he was her father. "Hi there, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, which is yours?" Hinata, blushing from behind her father's legs, reached out and took Naruto's extended hand. "Hyuga Hinata is my name, I'm glad to have met you." Naruto smiled slightly and said, "It's nice to meet you to Hinata." He then approached Kakashi. "All right, Kakashi the man grinned and said, "Hitaki Kakashi." His headband and mask obscured most of his face, revealing an eye that resembled an upside-down U. "All right, Kakashi Nisan, I'm prepared to leave." "Nisan?" Kakashi raised an eyebrow in question. "Yes, according to the elderly man, you always take care of me as an older brother would." "Hehe, okay then let's go." Tuto. Both Naruto and Kakashi vanished in a shunshin after grabbing Naruto's hand in the restrained Kumo shinobi. In the tower of the Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed as he remembered how he was appointed Hokage again. After the Kyuubi attack and his successor's death, he retook the mantle to help stabilize the leaf. Trying to honor the Yondaime's last wish for his son to be seen as a hero, he told the village as his status as a Jinchuriki. The reaction was split down the middle. While the civilians called for his head, many of the more experienced ninjas remembered about Kushina and her status as a Jinchuriki, and coming to the conclusion that during childbirth, Kushina died and the beast had to be sealed into her son. The bright red hair helped many realize that, when it was released. Recognizing the sacrifice Naruto's family was making, even if they didn't know who the dad was. The Jonin and clan heads were quick to rein in any and all bias towards Naruto. Since then, there have been many attempts to adopt Naruto, but the civilian council was being petty and denied any and all requests due to that Naruto was technically a civilian. The Sandame still remembered when he first brought Naruto to the council, and his one-time rival Danzo suggested that he be turned over to him and made a weapon. All the shinobi clan heads stone-walled him and poured enough killing intent towards the civilian council that they could barely control their bowels, much less open their mouths. Danzo had become such a short-sighted fool in his old age that he believed the village was the metaphorical king, and would do anything to anyone in the name of the village. He had forgotten the reason Hashirama and Tobirama-sensei had built the village in the first place, which was to create an environment where children wouldn't have to go out into the battlefields and parents wouldn't have to visit said children's shallow graves. Thinking of his old teammate Hiruzen made him feel disappointed. A knock on the door interrupted the third Fire Shadow's thoughts, and he said, "Come in." Exhausted, looking up to see Kakashi holding a tied-up Kumo nin with a stern expression on his face, he motioned for him to shut the door and give an explanation. Around 7:30 p.m., Naruto discovered this Kumo nin outside the Hyuga compound carrying a small kid-sized bag. Knowing that he couldn't defeat him alone, Naruto came to find me, but the Kumo nin saw him and pursued. Before being encircled, Naruto managed to make it to the memorial stone. I learned that the Kumo nin intended to bring Naruto and the Hyuga heiress back to Kumo for their bloodline program while he was hiding just before he arrived. Then Hiyashi-sama came and I subdued him while I escorted Naruto to my apartment. I allowed him to return the Hyuga heiress to their compound. I came here to report to you, sir. After that, taking out his pipe and lighting it with a tiny Kaden jutsu, Sarutobi sighed and said, "Take him to Ibiki and call the council for a meeting." Though it was a little disappointing that Kumo played down to their expectations, every Konoha Anbu was deployed, creating an impregnable barrier around Konoha. No one was getting out without them knowing. Honestly, it wasn't surprising because once you've seen one warmonger, you've seen them all, and Sarutobi had to deal with one almost every day. At least he could use this now that they had a bargaining chip against Kumo. He could use this to pressure the council into allowing a clan to adopt Naruto. Speaking of adoption, he opened his desk drawer and took out a stack of papers. Uchiha Fugaku was the first to offer after the Kyuubi attack and the adoption issue arose. Granted, the civilian council promptly shot down all attempts, but Fugaku remained obstinate and refused to give up. Every other week, the Uchiha clan asked him to adopt one Uzumaki Naruto, but the civilian council always shot it down at first. He was dubious because it was Uchiha. Not that anyone other than himself and the Kyuubi knew that was responsible for the Kyuubi attack, but after some research, he discovered the truth about Minato and Fugaku's relationship and chose to support him. With the civilian council's number in hand, he smirked and started to fill out the necessary paperwork to adopt one Uzumaki Naruto into the Uchiha clan. Council rooms. So it looks like Kumo really did try to kidnap the brat. Nara Shikaku, the Jonin commander, said that since Kumo had already attempted to kidnap Naruto's mother, they would most likely attempt to kidnap him as well if they had the opportunity. Akamichi Choza, a happy, heavy-set man, said, "Yep, but I hear he wasn't captured by the Anbu we have around the village. It seems that Kakashi was the one who defeated him." The final member of the first generation of Ino Shikacho, Yamanaka Inoichi, added, "We currently have him in interrogation and torture." The Hokage and his two colleagues, Mitokado Homura and Utatane Kaharu, were seen when the door to the council chambers opened. The Sandaime cleared his throat as they took their seats at the end of the council table. There are two topics we want to talk about today. The first is Kumo's adoption of Uzumaki Naruto and his attempt to abduct two clan heirs. "I believed we had already made our point. We're not going to adopt that demon," council member 1 said in a corny manner. "You can't do anything about it, and that's true," a pink-haired stereotypical council member 2, screamed. With a positively victorious grin, Sarutobi said, "That's where you're wrong. But I'll address that Akumo Nin was caught at 9 p.m. attempting to abduct the heirs of two clans. Both the Hyuga clan and the nearly extinct Uzumaki clan are mentioned. I believe it is fitting to leave him in Ibiki's gentle care because of this. In a torture cell that is extremely dark." As he awoke, Yasaka Hattori could not see or feel his chakra and felt his arms and legs bound. "Hi, Yasaka, do you want to engage in some gaming?" "Oh, I'm so grateful. I briefly believed that I had been handed over to Morino Ibiki. The sadist torturing people is how that guy gets his jollies, I promise." After that, Yasaka's blindfold was taken off, revealing Morino Ibiki's smiling face. "No." In the chambers of council, "Ooh," was heard all the way from the I&T department. "Well, as I mentioned earlier, one of our bloodlines was on the verge of being stolen due to the civilian council's carelessness. As a result, I'm prohibiting the civilian council from getting involved in any issues pertaining to Uzumaki Naruto, the heir." "What? This is impossible," cliché civilian council member number 3 said as Anbu led them out of the room. "Yes, we are able to because of your bigotry. You spit on Uzu's legacy and nearly cost Konoha our Jinchuriki and a strong bloodline. Even though you may want to get rid of the demon, keep this in mind, that demon might return to exact revenge in Kumo's hands," Homura remarked stoically. "They will be out for blood when Kumo finds out that we have taken one of their head jonin into custody." To refocus the discussion, Sarutobi stated, "What I want are ideas that end in our benefit without war." The one-eyed, war-mongering Danzo said, "Hiruzen, you cannot be serious. They are obviously in the wrong here, and since this is Kumo we are talking about, they won't let it go unless we give them what they want or put their balls in a vice." "I know, Danzo, I know. I do have an idea that will, in your own words, put their balls in a vice, but I want to hear the other suggestions so we don't have to resort to that," the Sandaime said, inhaling deeply and massaging his forehead. Danzo just nodded and took a step back, surprised that Sarutobi could still think in such a way. Though some people wanted to simply execute the Kumo Nin, while others wanted to release him as a sign of peace, it seemed that Shikaku lived up to his role as Jonin commander and took charge of the situation in the end. But it seemed that no one could agree on a practical solution. "If I may, Homage-sama." "Yes, what is it, Shikaku-san?" "What will you do if Kumo refuses to comply with our requests? We should know exactly how much of a trump card we have on them, in my opinion." Sarutobi sighed and lit his pipe, taking a long drag before extinguishing the smoke. "As I previously stated, the man we apprehended is a Kumo Jonin. However, I had not yet disclosed that he is also one of their head Jonin. Ibiki and an assistant are currently extracting every bit of information from his brain while he is down in I&T. We currently have access to all of Kumo's shady activities. Every kidnapping record, whether successful or not. We could probably persuade Iwa and Mizu to go to war with Kumo because of their hunger for power. 4 of the 5 great nations would be attacking one location. If Suna and I were involved, they'd be smashed to pieces. However, the destabilization of the national balance would result from that power vacuum. The next great war would most likely start as everyone would be attempting to extract as much as they could from the remains." The chambers reverberated with silence. The 4th Great Shinobi War would begin, but they had the chance to destroy one of the 5 great nations at this very moment. No, it would be excessive to destroy an entire nation over a mere kidnapping attempt. I want to find another solution. Because of this, we do know that Kumo will not give us any of their bloodlines or their Jinchuriki. What more is there to ask for? Jutsus? Resources? Give me something, please. We could ask for training for our Jinchuriki, Danzo replied. The room fell silent once more, this time due to the speaker rather than the words that were said. The fact that Danzo was putting forth a workable alternative that did not result in war was enough to shock everyone into silence. Danzo was a well-known warmonger in Konoha, and he and Sarutobi frequently clashed over their differing opinions about what was best for the village. Hear me out, even though I know that most of you consider me to be nothing more than a naive idiot who wants war without cause. We are currently vulnerable to the Kyuubi attack, but we have never witnessed a Kyuubi Jinchuriki truly wield its power. However, there were rumors about Kumo's perfect host. During the last war, Konoha's standing as the most powerful ninja village would be solidified once more if we could harness the Kyuubi's raw power. Excellently, I think that's a smart idea. Currently, if we choose to ratify the peace treaty, Kumo will become our ally, even if it was only a diversion. But Naruto-kun won't begin until he feels prepared and at least reaches Chunin rank. Everyone in agreement? The room chorused, agreed. As I mentioned earlier, the civilian council is no longer involved in decisions involving Naruto-kun, so we can adopt him without them obstructing our progress. This brings us to our second order of business. I will allow Fugaku to adopt Naruto into the Uchiha clan since he has been the most outspoken. This meeting is adjourned unless there are objections. I have to get ready for the moment Kumo finds out that their head Jonin is being held captive. Kumagakure, the screen in the Raikage's office, said, "Damn it," and then there was the sound of a desk crashing through a wall. Originally intended to be a straightforward kidnapping, the damned ambassador went too far and was apprehended. The Yondaime Raikage rubbed his forehead. Inside, Sarutobi had all the cards in this situation, and the only person he could send to try to negotiate the release of his head Jonin was another ambassador. In the apartment of Kakashi, the night's events finally caught up with one red-haired, blue-eyed child as he slept through the night without any dreams. He had come to tell Naruto about his new family, but he could always tell him when it was finalized. This was the scene Kakashi saw when he returned to his apartment. His sensei's son was so innocent and naive that it made him want to put the heads of every civilian council member on a pike. Kakashi chose to go to the living room and finish his reading after tucking Naruto in. When the Kumo ambassador arrived in Konoha, he was merely handed a scroll and told to leave. When he inquired about what was in the scroll, he was informed that it contained Konoha's demands and what they would do if they weren't met. Thinking it was a little strange, he chose to look at it, and quickly returned to Kumo. Kumagakure, they really screwed the pooch on this one, trying to kidnap not only the last of the Uzumaki clan but also the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Kumo was lucky that Konoha didn't decide to just shoot first and ask questions later. On the plus side, the alliance with Konoha would be smoothed over if Kumo agreed to this. At least they aren't asking for anything too drastic. Aside in relief, however, Konoha was still holding a symbolic gun to Kumo's head this time. They might be able to obtain the Uzumaki bloodline. Just yet the Yondaime Raikage grabbed a blank scroll, wrote his response, and got ready to send the scroll to Konoha. Konohagakure, as he read Kumo's response to Konoha's demands, Sarutobi Hiruzen let the pipe fall from his hand. They had agreed, of course, but they had proposed an arranged marriage. But not just any arranged marriage, to strengthen their bond and end any animosity between their countries. Uzumaki Naruto, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, and Ni Yugito, the Jinchuriki of the Nibi no Nekomanta, were forced into marriage. It would bind Kumo and Konoha together almost irrevocably, even though Kumo might end up receiving the Uzumaki bloodline. Jinchuriki were inherently more loyal to each other due to the fact that just about every Jinchuriki grew up hated and scorned. If Yugito and Naruto ended up growing close enough and Kumo tried to break off the alliance, Yugito would stay with Naruto rather than go back to Kumo, especially considering that she had no real connection to the cage as most Jinchuriki did to secure their loyalty. The question is, however, if Yugito and Naruto would truly bond. Yugito was 7 years old, a fresh genin out of Kumo's academy, even though she had been training with the Nibi's chakra her whole life. Naruto was 3 years old and not even aware of his burden. Sighing, Hiruzen decided that once Naruto entered the academy he would tell him of Kurama the Kyuubi. The academy would color Naruto's opinion of the old fox, even though the attack years ago wasn't really his fault. Not that anyone but him knew that. Not to mention how Naruto's parents probably asked Kurama to take care of their son. The reason the old fox hadn't made contact yet was probably due to how pumping enough of its chakra to forge a link to the boy would have killed him. All things considered, this is alright for now. I hope Naruto can forgive me when he learns about this. Naruto was running through the Uchiha compound at the age of 6. The Kumo incident and his subsequent adoption into the Uchiha clan had occurred 3 years prior. He asked why the Uchiha clan had chosen to adopt him after shedding happy tears. They were close to his parents. According to Uchiha Makoto, his new mother, he wanted to inquire about his parents, but a strange voice in the back of his mind told him not to. He got along well with his other older brother, Uchiha Itachi, but when he was first brought back, he got into a heated argument with Uchiha Sasuke, who was a few months older than him. The love and affection of his new family had helped Naruto come out of his shell in the last 2 years around people he knew. Makoto practically doused him in it, and even though he and Sasuke disagreed, Sasuke still called him Otuto, to acknowledge him as a member of the family and not just to irritate Naruto. Although it was concealed by the stoicism, Itachi did care like Itachi. Fugaku was initially stoic, but as time went on, he began to smile more around his family and took on Naruto's manner of dealing with others. However, Makoto would always advise him to try to remain in the Uchiha compound. For some strange reason she would simply respond that it was because she wanted to be near her baby when he questioned why, then smother him in her cleavage until he passed out. You would think Naruto and Itachi wouldn't get along because Itachi, like his father, was, for want of a better word, almost emotionless. He didn't realize why until he met Uchiha Shisui, Itachi's best friend. Shisui and Naruto clicked right away after Naruto opened up to him, and just a few weeks later, Shisui started referring to him as Shisui Onisan, as they say. The rest is history. Naruto's newfound love of pulling practical jokes and Shisui's passion for using his hypnotic genjutsu to manipulate his clan members led to the two of them terrorizing the Uchiha clan and Konoha as a whole. Speaking of tricks, he just executed one of his most brilliant ones to date. In order to conceal the Uchiha police force's extra uniforms, clothing, and undergarments, he had sneaked into each Uchiha member's home during the night. This left just one uniform for each member to wear when they went out. "Get back here, you little brat," that was painted a vivid pink color with orange highlights. Naruto leapt from the roof of the house he was on. Laughing to himself, he hooked himself onto a tree branch and swung into the forest, forming a chakra chain. About a year ago, Naruto realized he could use chakra to create solid objects at last. He had summoned the bravery to inquire about his mother and clan. Makoto had mentioned that she and his mother were very close, so he decided to ask her about his clan and his mother, despite the voice in the back of his mind telling him not to ask about his father just yet because they would think he was crazy. It seems that he belonged to a clan that was highly skilled in fuinjutsu and whose ancestry possessed at least one of the three characteristics. Greater longevity and greater chakra reserves were the first of these characteristics. These were present in all people who were born with Uzumaki blood. A 40-year-old Uzumaki would appear to be 20 in actuality. The longest Uzumaki lifespan ever documented was nearly 300 years. The second was the capacity to perceive the chakra levels of those in their immediate vicinity. In his early years, Naruto had been passively avoiding people by using this trait, which was known as Mind's Eye of the Kagura. The ability to transform their chakra into physical forms for use in battle or simply for convent purposes was the final and rarest characteristic. This trait was shared by Kushina Uzumaki and Mito, the Shodai's wife. Kushina took the form of chains, while Mito took the form of a dragon. When Naruto attempted this with his chakra, he discovered that he could form it into almost any shape, but the stability and strength of the construct depended on his concentration and the amount of chakra he used. After arguing with Sasuke about which of their bloodlines would make them more powerful shinobi, despite the fact that Sasuke had not yet unlocked his Sharingan, Itachi simply slapped them both on the head and told them that a shinobi's value was based on him, not the quality of his tools. Naruto started training to open his chakra as soon as he learned about his clan. After a few weeks, he finally unlocked it and started practicing using his chakra to form shapes. He would read books about fuinjutsu when he was exhausted from practicing his bloodline. Makoto was more than happy to let him read about seals, but she soon discovered the truth and specifically forbade him from practicing them. Even though she had given him a book about sealing, she insisted that he read the part about Jinchuriki for some reason. People known as Jinchuriki were able to access the power of the previously mentioned Biju because they had these things called Biju sealed inside of them. The Yondaime Hokage reportedly used a jutsu to defeat a Biju that had attacked Konoha 6 years prior, but Naruto wasn't sure how exactly one was supposed to kill a sentient mass of chakra. Naruto paused briefly to concentrate his mind's eye of the Kagura before rolling into a clearing in the forest. Naruto placed an eagle spread on the soft grass and closed his eyes to reflect on the thing that had been bothering him for the past week, sensing that the police force had seemingly given up and returned to search for their hidden clothes. The attack by Kyuubi. The stories the adults told the kids were so contradictory that they resembled a poorly written shonen manga plot. For starters, the Kyuubi simply materialized in the middle of Konoha without any explanation. The Kyuubi simply appeared in the middle of Konoha and started murdering people. If it had come from somewhere, Konoha could have seen it beforehand and prepared. That didn't make sense. The Kyuubi could only simply show up inside Konoha if someone called it there, which he doubted was possible given how much hatred Konoha harbored for the Kyuubi. In addition, the Kyuubi was sealed inside Uzumaki Mito following the battle of Uchiha Madara versus Senju Hashirama. Now that he thinks about it, his mother's last name was Uzumaki. When Mito passed away, there was no sign of the Kyuubi going on the rampage, so it was likely sealed inside another Jinchuriki who was kept a secret. most likely to deter assassination attempts. Wait, seals, Jinchuriki, individuals who had biju sealed inside them, Uzumaki Mito. The Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, his mother Kushina, Uzumaki Kushina, the Uzumaki lineage of more potent chakra. The date of the Kyuubi attack, October 10th, his birthday. The Yondaime was a seal master. Then everything came together. Makoto wanted him to remain inside the Uchiha compound because of the glares, the hatred, and the worse treatment he received during the Kyuubi festival. Everything made sense. The Kyuubi was sealed inside Mito's mother, Uzumaki Kushina. After his death, Kushina had gotten pregnant with him. At some point she must have passed away during childbirth, which is why the Kyuubi broke free. Though he couldn't simply seal the Kyuubi into anyone, the Yondaime had come to do just that. Unless their chakra was strong enough to counteract it, the person he sealed the Kyuubi into would have been roasted alive by the seal because of the Kyuubi's powerful chakra. Powerful, much like the Uzumaki clan's chakra. Hold on. The Sandaime would have informed him if he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, wouldn't they? Wouldn't his family have told him? For something this significant, they wouldn't have kept him in the dark. Yes, exactly. Panicked, Naruto thought as he channeled chakra and raised his shirt to check for a seal. When I asked Tusan and Ka-chan why I was always treated cruelly, they would have explained. If I had asked Itachi ni and Shisui ni what had happened to the Kyuubi, they would have told me. When I questioned why I had to hide on my birthdays every year to avoid being harmed by the mobs, Sarutobi Gigi would have explained. They would never have told lies too. When a spiral seal with 8 prongs appeared on his stomach, all of his thoughts were diverted. Hyuga compound. Hyuga Hinata was viewed by her clan as a failure. Despite the constant encouragement from Hisashi Ojisan and Neji Nisan to strive for excellence, she was never able to meet the expectations set by Odo-sama. She sighed as she remembered Uzumaki Naruto, or more accurately, Uchiha Uzumaki Naruto, the red-haired boy she had met during the Kumo incident 4 years prior. He was adopted into the Uchiha clan. Following the incident, Hinata wanted to see him again because she would have been abducted by that Kumo nin if it weren't for him, but Odo-sama would simply respond, "We don't associate with Uchihas." Whenever she asked, he had grown particularly distant from her following the death of her Ka-san. Perhaps next year she would see Naruto at the academy. The clearing of forests. All Naruto knew was that he wanted to be by himself, but he had no idea how long he had been sitting there in the forest clearing. Jinchuriki. Human sacrifices power. All his life, he had been deceived. Why he was constantly treated cruelly by everyone at the orphanage. The cause of the constant glares he received outside the Uchiha compound. All of them knew, but they kept it from him. The 5 great shinobi village's most potent weapon. He was at a loss for what to think. According to the book he read, Jinchuriki were frequently related to the cage in order to guarantee village loyalty. The Sandaime could not have been his father. He might have been his grandfather, however. That would not account for the origin of his blue eyes. Did his family only show him kindness because of that? Make sure he was a villager? Naruto was so engrossed in his angst spiral that he failed to notice the person coming from the woods. In his clan, Uchiha Shisui was always viewed as a peculiarity. He was more outspoken and showed his feelings when he wasn't on duty, in contrast to the majority of his clan, who were stoic and expressionless. Yes, he was somewhat of a pervert, but all men are. When he eventually met Naruto, a few months after joining the clan, these characteristics helped him form a bond with the boy. As he was with everyone he didn't know, Naruto was initially aloof toward Shisui, but over time, he warmed up to him and the two developed an unbreakable bond. Although Naruto seemed to be thinking about something lately, he had taken to pranks like a fish to water when Shisui first introduced him to them. It had been a ruse to get the child to steal some girl's underwear. The two of them terrorized Konoha every day. Shisui saw a head of red hair with spikes in a wooded clearing while he was strolling through the forest. Speaking of the devil, he will show up. He saw that it was getting late. As he looked at the sun, Makoto decided it would be a good idea to get Naruto home because he would get upset if he wasn't home by curfew. Shisui smiled and said, "Hey there little guy, how's it going?" as he entered the forest clearing. With his spiky bangs covering his blue eyes, Naruto replied, "I'm fine." Shisui had that set of red flags in his mind. The child was almost silent when he first met Naruto and always tried to blend in as much as possible. Shisui had grown to like Naruto, and he had discovered over the years that Naruto was very outspoken about his feelings to those who mattered to him. He would be jumping all over the place and generally raising hell if he was upset about something. It was significant that he wasn't doing that and was instead attempting to suppress his feelings. Shisui took a seat beside Naruto and waited for him to speak. Despite Shisui's reputation for Shunshin, as a genjutsu expert, he had a good understanding of how the mind functions. Naruto would become hostile if you tried to force him to tell him what had happened. He had to hold off on speaking until Naruto was prepared. After a few minutes, the question, "Why didn't anyone tell me about the Kyuubi?" was indeed raised. Shisui put an arm around Naruto and pulled the boy into a one-armed embrace, allowing him to lean on him. Despite the Sandame's law prohibiting discussing Naruto's status as a Jinchuriki, someone consoled him after he eventually learned of it. "So you finally figured it out, huh?" "Well, there's a law that the Sandame passed after the Kyuubi attack that actually stops people from telling you under penalty of death." Unable to understand why the Sandame passed that law, Naruto questioned, "But still, why was it kept a secret from me when everyone else knew?" "The same reason that Makoto Obasan tried to keep you in the Uchiha district as much as possible. She and the Sandame wanted you to have as close to a normal childhood as you could, even with your burden. Don't think for a second any of us kept it from you out of spite. We just didn't want to see you grow up so fast," Shisui said as he massaged Naruto's. "Oh, I guess I understand, Shisui Nichin. That must be why Makoto Kasen wanted me to read that section about Jinchuriki in the Fuinjutsu book, so I wouldn't be confused and think I was the Kyuubi," Naruto said with his eyelids drooping. "That's right, Naruto-chan. Me, Fugaku Ojisan, Makoto Obasan, Itachi, all of us, even though our first loyalty should be to the village and our clan, care more for you and Sasuke-chan more than anything in the world. Never forget that." Shisui grinned softly. He lifted Naruto onto his back and headed for the Uchiha clan headhouse after hearing light snoring. Hokage Tower, seeing his surrogate grandson form a bond with his self-appointed brother, made Sarutobi Hiruzen smile. Even so, he thought, it's amazing that he was able to piece together the circumstances of the Kyuubi attack and determine that he was Jinchuriki while all the civilians are still living in their own little fantasy worlds. The boy was undoubtedly as intelligent as Minato for several reasons. Minato was regarded as a once-in-a-lifetime prodigy. His tendency to obsess over things until he figured them out, his remarkable ability to see beneath the surface, and his attempt to understand the mechanics of the summoning jutsu were some of the most unsettling reasons. There was no way to conceal anything from the former Yondaime. Within months of getting to know Kushina, he had discovered she was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. Although it took him a year to realize she was a girl and nearly 10 years to realize she was in love with him, he eventually moved on. In summary, it appeared that Namikaze men were remarkably perceptive about things that others would miss, but as a result, they would overlook obvious things. Sarutobi sighed and reasoned that if Naruto had to meet the Kyuubi, it would be better if he did so sooner rather than later. In light of this, he instructed his secretary to contact a candidate he believed would be ideal for the position. Itachi Uchiha was a genius. Almost every day he received compliments on this aspect. At age 7, he graduated first in his class, learning the Sharingan at the age of 8. Enrolling in Anbu 6 months after passing the Chunin exams at the age of 10. He was already en route to Anbu captain, according to many. However, very few people actually understood him. His mother, his best friend Shisui, his younger brothers, and, more recently, his father were all on that short list. The thought of his adopted younger brother, Uchiha Uzumaki Naruto, caused Itachi to smile a little. The boy possessed a strange talent for making people simply gravitate toward him. Sasuke's father used to be cold, aloof, and practically uninterested, but after a year of living with Naruto, he started to change. His emotions increased, spent more time with his family, and stopped ignoring Sasuke and lavishing Itachi with affection. Sasuke, who had previously been envious of Itachi's prodigy status and the attention that everyone was paying to him, calmed down. He felt less abandoned now that he had a younger brother to spend time with. Slowly, even Itachi had been evolving. Even though he was still as silent as a rock, he started speaking up more. He found himself caring even more for his younger brothers as a result of Naruto's persistent nagging, which kept him away from training and missions with Sasuke for nearly all of his time. Nothing was more important to him than the safety of Naruto and Sasuke, not even the village. When he brought this up to his mother, she informed him that he possessed both his mother's and his father's charisma, which allowed him to seduce others despite their best efforts to go against the grain. He was made aware of Naruto's Jinchuriki status when he first arrived at Anbu a few months ago. When he asked the Sandame why Naruto was unaware, the elderly man explained that it was kept a secret to give him a chance at a normal childhood and that he would be told when he started at the academy. Although Naruto's parents may have transformed him into a Jinchuriki, Sarutobi was aware that if he had been transformed into an emotionless weapon, as Danzo desired, they would have wanted to personally destroy Konoha. Itachi had long since deduced Naruto's parentage. Given that she, Fugaku, and Itachi would frequently meet with Minato and Kushina, it was only a matter of asking his mother. He wondered absently what kind of game he would play with Naruto and Sasuke tomorrow after learning that he had received a summons from the Hokage Itachi. The Tower of Hokage. When Sarutobi heard someone knocking on the door, He beckoned for them to enter. The door opened, revealing Uchiha Itachi's expressionless face. "You called Hokage-sama?" He took his pipe from his desk and lit it using a tiny Kaiden jutsu, saying, "Yes, Itachi-kun, sit down." There was awkward silence for a few moments. "I wanted to tell you Naruto has figured out his status as a Jinchuriki." Itachi's eyes widened slightly, but that was the only visible reaction. "I see, but that is not the reason you called for me, is it?" As he turned on the silencing seal and gestured for the Anbu in the room to leave, the Sandaime sighed wistfully and laughed ruefully. "Yes, you are a true prodigy, Itachi-kun, but you must first comprehend the facts of the night of the Kyuubi attack in order to comprehend this order." "Is the night of the Kyuubi attack true?" Sarutobi turned around and nodded, his eyes serious. "Itachi, I am going to tell you something that should be considered a rank SS secret. You wouldn't be hearing this if it weren't for your ascent through the ranks of Anbu and Naruto's deep affection for you. You get it? Don't violate my confidence." Itachi nodded after concentrating and making sure he remembered the next exchange. "You must be aware of the conflict between Hashirama and Madara when Madara lost his attempt to use the Kyuubi to gain an advantage. The Kyuubi was sealed into Uzumaki Mito. No Uchiha was unaware of that battle, and Itachi nodded. However, something you don't know is that the Kyuubi requested to be sealed into Mito." "What?" "Yes, the Kyuubi asked to be sealed into Uzumaki Mito in order to prevent it from being controlled again because Madara's Sharingan was controlling it in actuality. The Kyuubi is a fairly intelligent creature." "Why did the Kyuubi attack Konoha if that is the case?" "While the Kyuubi did attack Konoha, it wasn't of its own will." Itachi's eyes narrowed instantly, and he said, "You believe Uchiha to be the cause of the Kyuubi attack?" "Itachi-kun, wait while I finish. There are currently only 4 people who are aware that a Sharingan can control the Kyuubi. It was you, me, the attacker, and the Kyuubi nonetheless. There have been rumors circulating in that direction. Konoha is beginning to think that the attack was carried out by the Uchiha clan as a whole." "That is a BSU." Itachi started to object, but the Sandaime interrupted him. "I understand Minato and Kushina were close to Fugaku and Mikoto. I think it was a single Uchiha who did it. I was just sharing with you the village's general consensus. Itachi-kun, don't be so impatient." "My apologies, Hokage-sama. It's okay. I would have responded similarly. However, I would like you to watch your clan for me in case you discover who this enigmatic Uchiha is." "Excellent, Hokage-sama, but how can you be certain that it was a Uchiha?" "I'll talk to Itachi-kun about that. The Kyuubi now needed to be sealed into a new host after Mito passed away. Uzumaki Kushina was the new host. Naruto's mother. Yes, now there is one time when a female Jinchuriki's seal weakens enough for their Biju to be released, during childbirth. And the individual who attacked Kushina tore the Kyuubi from the seal, and used it to attack Konoha when Naruto was born. I would like to ask Hokage-sama." "Yes. Why do you think Uchiha, rather than someone else, was responsible for the attack?" "He had time to give me a scroll before the Yondaime teleported the Kyuubi to seal it away." Sarutobi finished, letting the words seem to linger in the air. "On said the scroll, he asked me to take care of Naruto and gave me a general idea of what happened, but one word stood out: Sharingan." "I see. Could I get my orders right away, Hokage-sama?" "Yes, I want you to use your Sharingan to enter Naruto's mindscape so he can meet with the Kyuubi." "What?" That caused Itachi to react, his eyes wide and slack-jawed. Indeed, Kushina, the Kyuubi's former container, was someone it respected and felt the same way about. "I wouldn't be shocked if Kushina and Minato had requested that the Kyuubi take care of Naruto prior to their passing," Sarutobi explained, taking a few drags from his pipe. "If they did, it would be better for Naruto to meet the Kyuubi and establish a connection now." "Hokage-sama is understandable, but what if Naruto chooses not to?" After he had calmed down, Itachi asked. Then attempt to explain to him that the attack 6 years ago wasn't spontaneous and that the Kyuubi is an intelligent creature. Don't force him if he still refuses, but make sure he understands that he will eventually have to meet it. "Do you mind if I understand, Hokage-sama?" "Yes." The home of the Uchiha clan. It was around 11 o'clock at night when Itachi arrived home. Uchiha Mikoto, a young woman with long black hair and the characteristic coal-black eyes of the Uchiha family, said, "Ah, Itachi-chan. Have you seen Naruto? He has gone well beyond curfew." Itachi heard a voice behind him say, "Hey, I got him right here." As he turned around, he saw Uchiha Shisui grinning and holding a mop of red hair on his shoulder. "Ah, Naruto-chan." Mikoto took Naruto to his bedroom and said, "Thank you, Shisui-kun. He knows he shouldn't stay out this late. Do you know where To-san is, Ka-san? I want to speak with you both. You ought to remain here as well, Shisui," Itachi said. Makoto's voice came from the hallway. Fugaku-kun is at a clan meeting, just let me finish tucking in Naruto-chan and I'll be right out. So, Itachi, how are you? As Makoto returned from the hallway, Shisui inquired. Itachi chose to be direct and simply stated, Naruto-kun knows about the Kyuubi. Shisui did not react visibly, but Makoto's eyes widened and she had a look of shock on her face. Shisui? Itachi inquired, perplexed as to why Shisui had not responded. I already know Naruto-chan was still rooted to the spot, depressed, because he believed that no one trusted him enough to tell him. When I ran into him on my way back here, he was in a panic. When I brought it up to him, he accepted my justification and extended forgiveness to all of you. Shisui grinned and remarked, he has a really big heart. How did he learn about it? Makoto inquired, intending to speak with Naruto when he woke up in the morning. Hey, the brat has Minato Ojisama's appearance and intelligence, but he may have Kushina Obasan's red hair and bloodline. He was able to solve it on his own. Shisui smirked and remarked, it's fortunate you gave him that book on seals, boss-san, because he claimed otherwise he might have believed he was the Kyuubi himself. I was concerned that might have happened, Makoto said with a smile. Kushina-chan told me that she was terrified of becoming its Jinchuriki, even though she didn't have that issue when Naruto and Sasuke arrived at the academy. I had hoped that it would be easier for him to discover that the demon was sealed inside the person. How is the clan's unrest going? Itachi inquired, bringing up a subject nobody wanted to bring up. It has been deteriorating. Makoto frowned and remarked, some of the clan members are even suggesting that we release the Kyuubi on Konoha. No, personally, I would kill them all before allowing them to hurt Naruto. Anbu or not, Itachi was still a 12-year-old boy when he sneered with an odd expression. Itachi-chan, please relax, we might have to visit the Hokages soon, but Fukaki-kun and I won't allow it to get that far, Makoto remarked. Konoha is already weakened from the Kyuubi attack, Shisui explained, adding, we can't let the Uchiha clan stage a coup d'etat. It would be the final blow if the Uchiha clan rebelled. Konoha wouldn't be able to protect herself from her adversaries. Even if the Uchiha were successful, the Fourth Great Shinobi World War would begin when the other major nations would fall on us like a pack of wolves. After a brief period of silence in the hallways, Itachi said, it's time for us all to sleep. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll make sure to speak with Naruto. The three Uchiha then retired to their beds. The mindscape of Naruto. When Naruto opened his eyes, he looked around, but he didn't feel wet. It appeared as though he was in a huge sewerway, with water up to his ankles. A closer look at the walls revealed that there were large pipes with a strange dark blue glow, and that smaller pipes connected to the larger pipes had a red, angry glow. Since Naruto had no idea where he was, he chose to just keep moving forward, even though he could only go forward or backward in two directions. After a few minutes, Naruto finally arrived at a massive prison with a ceiling tag in the center. I'm in my mindscape, so this must be where the Kyuubi is. Why is the inside of my head a sewer, then? Perhaps due to your filthy little mind? A voice from behind the bars boomed. Naruto angrily yelled at the voice, hey, I'm not a pervert. Allocate several years for yourself. The voice's sardonic response was, when puberty hits, it hits hard. You're the Kyuubi, but I thought you'd be more, don't you? Release me from my prison, whelp. Evil and all. Since what he read was a sentient mass of hate, Naruto felt strange for having a conversation with it. And I expected you to be taller, Chibi-kun. Hey, I still haven't reached my growth spurt. Naruto yelled. His height was always a source of annoyance for him, although he wasn't particularly short, because Makoto made sure he ate more than just ramen. He was still a few inches shorter than Sasuke, so he always became angry when someone made fun of his height. Well, I found my new nickname for you. So, how did I enter and exit this place? Being trapped in your own thoughts when your mind was a sewer was kind of awful, Naruto complained as he looked around. You in here because I called you here, and to get out you just, well, I guess thinking yourself out would be the best way to describe it. Why did you call me down here, I wonder? Naruto inquired. Despite the Kyuubi's supposed evil nature, the giant fox, man, chakra, etc., seemed to be at least somewhat civil. Naruto felt as though the Kyuubi's eye was moving, despite his inability to see through the darkness. I take offense to being called a giant fox, man, chakra thing, you know. Oh, how did you think about us? What do you think? Ooh, anyway, the reason I called you here is I wanted to get a look at my godson. What, are you my godfather? Naruto shouted, his eyes wide. In a technical sense, I am your godmother. The white-haired pervert who gave you your frog wallet on your 6th birthday is your godfather. You mean my godfather is Ero Gigi. Since that day, Every title Naruto and Sasuke gave Jiraiya had an arrow in front of it. Naruto and Sasuke would typically spend time with the man at hot springs, even though neither of them understood why he was always looking through that hole and giggling until they took a look themselves. Naruto gave Jiraiya the name Arrow Gigi, even though he couldn't visit because of maintaining his spy network, but he made sure to show up on his birthdays. But why'd I only see him a few times a year if he's my godfather? Naruto frowned as he asked. He is a significant figure in Konoha Chibi-kun's life. I'm fairly certain that I only saw him 3 or 4 times a year while I was sealed in your mother, and even then, Kushina was the one who was going to meet him and your father. Any further queries, then? I want to establish a mental connection. After this you won't have to think about me to talk to me anymore, even though it will hurt like hell. Who is my father and why did you attack Konoha? Yeah, the big questions. I'm not yet able to identify your father. I can tell you what happened on October 10th. But it's not a good idea for people to find out you were his son because he had a lot of enemies. From behind the shadows, Naruto heard some shifting, and he sat down on the floor, assuming it would be a lengthy story because the Kyuubi was getting comfortable. Long story short, Uchiha attacked your mother while she was giving birth to you, took control of me, used me to attack Konoha, and then I was sealed inside you. One part of Naruto's face stuck out to him after he somehow fell while he was sitting. Wait, you mentioned that you and my mother were attacked by Uchiha? Yes, but don't assume that one person's actions represent the group's. I haven't warned you to be cautious around your family, and there's a reason for that. Although he couldn't be certain, Naruto would swear he heard the Biju mention insane Tanuki. Whatever happened to my father? It was technically true that Minato loved Naruto and that he died to give him the ability to defend himself going forward. I can't tell you exactly how, but he loved you and died to protect you. Naruto felt comforted by the knowledge that his father loved him, despite the fact that he was unaware of his identity. Alright, so is there anything else? No, Chibi-kun. We'll speak tomorrow. Prepare for me to create the link now. Naruto closed his eyes and muttered, not a chibi. A burning feeling started in the back of his head and got worse until he passed out. The morning after, Naruto sat up, stretched, and yawned as he opened his eyes, realizing that he was back in his room in the clan head house of the Uchiha. Naruto put on a bathrobe and thought, I must have been brought back last night by Shisui-Nisan. What a strange dream I had last night. I suppose I was more affected than I realized when I realized I was the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. That was no dream, Chibi-kun. As Naruto entered the bathroom and started to brush his teeth, he remarked, so I'm guessing the link is connected? Yes, a voice is now inside your head. Congratulations, you're officially insane. Meh, really, meh. As he switched on the shower, Naruto answered the Kyuubi, yeah. I mean, it's only one voice and it's pretty cool to be able to talk to someone who is supposed to be thousands of years old, you know. I guess that's true. Please pardon me. Minato and Kushina having a voice in their head would frighten most people, but your son has turned strange. I know you're real, so it's not like I have an imaginary friend or anything, and it kind of reminds me that you'll always be there for me. Yes, I suppose the fact that I am real would make you feel less insane. Naruto dried off after turning off the shower, changed into his clothes, and went to the dining room to have breakfast. Dining area. While making breakfast for her family, Makoto was deep in thought. Last night, when Fugaku arrived home, he informed her that the unrest was getting worse and that they would have a rebellion within a year, if not less. The Elder Council members were already attempting to persuade Fugaku to allow them to use Naruto as a negotiating chip, but he vehemently refused. She sighed, letting her mind wander to what would happen if the council refused to back down and the Hokage learned of their plans. Although Hiruzen might initially attempt to find a peaceful solution, he was the Hokage and had to take the necessary actions for the village. Otherwise, the Uchiha clan would have to be completely wiped out, with no witnesses and no way to connect it to the village. Otherwise, the other clans would rebel out of fear of being wiped out. When Fugaku returned home last night and told him that Naruto was aware of the Kyuubi, her husband's expression was absolutely murderous. When he insisted that she tell him who had told him, she simply shook her head, smiled, and said, Naruto-chan is truly his father's son. Since Fugaku knew that Naruto had discovered this on his own, he couldn't help but smile proudly, even though he didn't actually be his biological son. He loved him just as much as he loved Sasuke and Itachi. This was a stark contrast to the man 3 years prior, who ignored Sasuke and concentrated on making Itachi the ideal clan head. Naruto has genuinely improved their family's situation over the past 3 years, bringing them all closer together. Makoto felt that she should apologize even though Shisui had told her that Naruto had understood why they had kept the knowledge of the Kyuubi from him. Sasuke was still asleep when she looked at Fugaku, who was sitting at the dining table waiting for Naruto to finish showering Fugaku's face, showed no signs of nervousness. She knew that Fugaku felt the same on the inside, even though his response was just the typical Uchiha, HN. Itachi was out buying Pocky, and Sasuke was still asleep, so it was the ideal moment for them to talk as Makoto finished setting the table and ushered Naruto into the dining room, his spiky red hair bouncing. "Hey, Naruto-chan, would you mind talking about? You're referring to Kyuubi?" With all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, Naruto said. Makoto gestured to Fugaku, who grunted despite appearing sorry. Well yes, your father and I just want to say we are sorry and we hope you understand why we kept it from you." "I understand, Ka-san-tu-san, so don't worry." Before returning to his meal, Naruto grinned broadly and said, "Shisui Nisan explained it to me." Like Naruto, who never let anything bring him down and always got back up after receiving an explanation, Makoto grinned and exchanged a glance with Fugaku. After a little while, Sasuke entered with a messy duck-ass hairstyle, followed by Itachi carrying a large bag of Pocky. The remainder of breakfast was spent in pleasant silence. The training grounds of Naruto and Sasuke. The training grounds reverberated with the sounds of two young children fighting. Naruto and Sasuke enjoyed training and fighting together even though they would be starting the academy the following year. Naturally, they took care to avoid causing each other too much harm. The majority of the time Sasuke leapt over a sweep kick and landed a snap kick that struck Naruto in the jaw. Naruto used the momentum to spin and land a kick into Sasuke's stomach, knocking him back into a tree. "Aha! This time, Sasuke, I'm winning," Naruto declared as he tended to his jaw. "Now that's only because you've been practicing taijutsu for a longer period of time than I have." Members of the Uzumaki clan used the swirling fist style of taijutsu, which used grappling to apply seals and spinning attacks that used the opponent's momentum against them. "You are aware that until I unlocked my Sharingan, Tu-chan and Oni-chan would not teach the interceptor fist." Naruto struck with great force, and Sasuke muttered, wiping some spit from his chit, "I would have won if I had my Sharingan." Naruto stuck his tongue out at Sasuke and said, "No, I would have still won," he said in a matter-of-fact manner. "The only reason I don't use my bloodline is because you don't have yours yet, and since I've had more experience with my bloodline I would win." With a growl, Sasuke got to his feet and threw Naruto to the ground, where they resumed their battle. As he watched his two younger brothers spar, Itachi broke into a smile. Naruto liked to boast that he always prevailed, but in reality, Sasuke won about half the time. Shisui had sat Naruto down and told him everything, so Naruto had really taken the news of the Kyuubi in stride. However, Itachi was curious about Naruto's reaction to meeting the Kyuubi. Itachi decided he would stop at nothing to save those innocents after laughing when he witnessed Naruto tying Sasuke to a tree with his chakra chains. Ultimately, these tranquil days were coming to an end. Our future heroes were relaxing and enjoying the lunch Makoto had prepared for them after Sasuke had managed to get Naruto to free him from the tree, and the two had made the decision to take a break. "Hey Sasuke, HN. Naruto, who had never been good at being subtle, declared, "I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Calm down, would you mind sharing your tomatoes with me?" Without raising an eyebrow, Sasuke uttered those words. As he gave Sasuke his share of the tomatoes Makoto had prepared for them, Naruto said in a daze, Sure. Hold on. All you have to say is, cool, even though I have the monster that nearly destroyed Konoha 6 years ago sealed in my stomach." Incredulous, Naruto yelled. "Now you know how I felt by your lack of reaction to me. Calm down, I'm speaking to my brother right now." "Yes, what do you think he'll say?" Sasuke's face was straight as he spoke. "I'm not sure. Be more shocked or something," cradling his head, Naruto said. "I stopped being surprised by you when you somehow laced Itachi's Pocky with laxatives and got away with it." Sasuke was deadpanned. "But wait, how did you know it was me? Is there anyone else who is brave enough to touch Itachi's Pocky?" With a shudder, Sasuke remarked, "Itachi nearly castrated Shisui when he tried that one time. It was said that when Itachi was still a genin, he had destroyed an entire bandit camp because they forced him to spill his Pocky onto the ground. No one knew why, but Itachi loved Pocky more than Naruto loved ramen, going through 6 boxes every day and guarding it with the zeal of a dying man." Sasuke eating his bento was the only sound to break the silence. Naruto had been sitting in for a few moments. Sasuke finished his bento and started stretching, saying, "You should eat your bento before it spoils." Naruto started eating his bento mechanically. "Why aren't you surprised?" he asked. "Why do you not give a damn?" Sasuke slowly turned his gaze to meet that of his adopted younger brother and said, "Because it doesn't matter." "What? What if you had the Kyuubi in your hands? The fact that you have lived with me for the past 3 years is unaffected by that. The fact that we train together every day is unaffected. The fact that we grew up together is unaffected. Oni-chan, Tu-san, Ka-san, and Shisui-ni-chan all care about you and see you as a member of our family, and that doesn't change anything. Are you curious about the changes it makes? Nothing. As he concluded his stretching and started some chakra control exercises, Sasuke stated firmly, it doesn't change anything, Naruto. If anything, I'm only sad that you didn't feel you could tell me this earlier. Despite the tears streaming down his face, Naruto smiled and said, hey, to be honest, I only found out yesterday myself. With a smirk, Sasuke remarked, you always were a little dense. They didn't speak until later that day, when they got home. Dinner time at Uchiha clan head house later that day. How did everyone's day go? HN. It was enjoyable. Sasuke and I went back to training. Oh, did the bentos I made for you two taste good? HN. Indeed, Ka-san, they were excellent. Another fascinating discussion at the dinner table in Uchiha. Itachi informed Naruto that he wanted to speak with him in his room as they were wrapping up their meal. The room of Itachi. Naruto, the Sandame wants me to help you contact the Kyuubi. It's okay, I spoke with it last night already. What if you don't wait? I get it, yeah, the night after I figured out I was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, it pulled me into my mindscape so it could meet me face to face and form a mental link. I see. Would it be okay if I entered your mindscape to look at the seal? Alright, but let me warn you first, for whatever reason, it's a sewer. Naruto, please say no if Shisui ever asks you to take a girl's underwear again. And done. Phew, this chapter sure was huge compared to the last two. Anyway, on Friday, around the middle of the day, I plan to take the poll down, so vote while you can. Really? Only 3 people voted so far. TT_TT. Anyway, whatever wins the poll is actually going to affect the way I do the next chapter and the way I portray Naruto. Any Naruto with Rinnegan is going to have a bit of Pain's personality, where he thinks the reason people fight is because they don't understand what it means to truly be hurt and will try to bring about world peace. Happy, crossover end. Whereas Naruto with only Sharingan or no Dojutsu Naruto is going to be a Naruto that is a little bit like Kuritsugu from the Fate franchise. He will do some bad things for the greater good, saving the most lives, but he draws the line at harming those he cares about. Good, true end. Naruto with Rinnegan and Sharingan will be a cross of the two. His final goal will be world peace, and will be willing to do anything to anyone but draws the line at those he cares about. Sad, crossover end. Naruto won't be like this immediately, rather his personality will change over the course of the story. Also, I will be posting another poll after the one I have up right now closes. Basically, if Sharingan plus Rinnegan Naruto wins, then it will be whether Naruto has an Obito thing going where it's Sharingan in one eye and Rinnegan in the other, or like Madara where he has it in both eyes but he can switch them on the fly. Also, it will apply to only Sharingan Naruto where he has it only in one eye or both eyes. Next chapter is Uchiha Massacre and then canon. Anyway, here's an omake that I planned to put in the story, but it seemed a bit too goofy, so I edited it out and added an ending. No, it is not canon for my story review PLZ. Edit 1. Okay. So I have a lot of imagined scenarios about how the Uchiha Massacre might unfold, so I really need your votes on the poll. I'll post a few excerpts from the choice that received the most votes when I wake up on Thursday, so you can get a good sense of the direction the FIC is going. But you'll still have until Friday for me to finalize my choice. I went into further detail about what the plot would entail. We don't need 2 sad, crossover ends, so edit 2 changed only Rinnegan to 1. Edit 3. Sorry, I edit a lot, guys, this is my first story. I decided not to post the second poll and instead to give Naruto the ability to use all of the Mangekyo techniques, but there will be drawbacks. The reason for this is that Naruto won't be using Shadow Clone spam training, so he won't just pick everything up quickly. Number 72 Hour Tsukuyomis, no instant Amaterasus, none of that shit. I have an explanation for the Shadow Clone thing, but I won't tell you until I post it in the chapter. The Mangekyo techniques are the same, but they're fairly lengthy, and I can't explain them in a chapter without looking awkward, so I'll include them in the next post, which will contain the snippets of the top 2 poll choices. Omake. The true cause of Itachi's murder of Shisui. Itachi's chamber following dinner, with the exception of the Pocky Bank, Itachi's room was as expressionless as he was, with only 2 pictures on his bedside and white walls that were as plain as possible. Itachi took some strawberry Pocky out of the Pocky Bank and started to eat it. Naruto knew that whatever it was, Itachi was anxious to discuss it because he only ate strawberry Pocky when he felt anxious. Following several awkward minutes of silence, Naruto made the decision to find out what was causing Itachi's anxiety. I pardon you for keeping the Kyuubi a secret from me. No, it was something else, it wasn't that. Perhaps he wants to share the story of the birds and bees with you? What are the bees and birds? Hey, how about asking Itachi? What are the bees and birds, Itachi-Nisan? Who informed you of that? Itachi asked, staring intently. I was instructed to ask you about it by Shisui-Nisan. With no remorse for making the elder Uchiha a target, Naruto said. Itachi narrowed his eyes and answered, I see. Uchiha Shisui felt a chilly hand suddenly clamp down on his back. Whoa, what was that? Shisui said, surveying his surroundings, and continuing to walk without noticing anything strange. That was strange, you know. I haven't felt that way since Sasuke discovered my H collection by accident and asked Itachi about it. Itachi then had to explain the situation to him. Itachi's room following an explanation of the nature of the bees and birds. Itachi, who had just finished his Pocky during his explanation, was sitting there with his typical stoic expression, but you could see a tiny twitch in his left eye. Naruto was sitting there with a very deep flush on his face. Naruto pointed to his privates and said, so this. Naruto went on, blushing all the way down to his neck. G goes into a girl's. And when a guy. Naruto uttered, his arms flushed, giving him the appearance of a nice tomato. I inside a girl's. And TT, that's the origin of Bobby babies? What if a girl and a girl? Shisui's body was discovered drowned in the Naka River 3 days later. At first look, Konoha appeared to be doing fine. Konoha, however, wasn't feeling well. The Uchiha clan, one of the strongest clans in Konoha, experienced civil unrest. The rumors that the Kyuubi attack 7 years ago was planned by Uchiha and that a coup d'etat was being discussed had caused them to become increasingly estranged in recent years. It was impossible for that to occur. The Uchiha family's coup would leave Konoha too open to enemy assaults. The clan head house in Uchiha. This is getting ridiculous. We can't even let Naruto-chan outside anymore on the off chance that the other clan members might try to kidnap him, Makoto grinned. Fugaku frowned and remarked, we really will have to go to Sandaime-sama soon. The clan elders are too caught up in their own pride as bigotry to realize that the reason the Uchiha have been getting more and more alienated is because of our pride not allowing us to admit that no one since Uchiha Madara has been able to control the Kyuubi. Before turning to Itachi, who had been strangely quiet, Fugaku concluded, the clan has been getting more and more restless. Soon they might come at Makoto and me just to remove any opposition to the coup. Itachi, I know you've been acting as a double agent for the Sandaime. I honestly couldn't care less. If anything, I'm proud of you that you're so willing to protect your home. And if we can't find a solution in time, promise me that you will take care of Naruto and Sasuke. Fugaku said with a knowing yet caring expression in the corners of his eyes. Itachi fell silent in shock with the exception of his younger brothers. The elders were attempting to persuade him to kill his entire clan. Fugaku wasn't an idiot. He most likely realized that everyone, guilty and innocent alike, would have to perish if they were to stop the Uchiha clan before the coup. If not, the other clans would rebel out of fear that they might experience the same thing. Additionally, he was aware that Captain Itachi of Enbu reported to the Hokage first and foremost. In essence, Fugaku had just informed his son, if you have to kill us, I understand, just make sure to take care of your siblings. Itachi walked shakily to his room and said, I understand too, San. Before the tears came, he was able to shut the door. The room of Naruto. As he swung a chakra construct katana around, alternating between some simple sword katas, Naruto was unable to sigh. The Uchiha family had been growing increasingly agitated. Even the idea of a coup was circulating. Makoto had asked Naruto to try to spend as much time as possible in the house. About 2 weeks prior, he knew why the Kyuubi would be a potent weapon to have in light of the Uchiha's talk of rebellion, and he wouldn't put his attempt to kidnap him above the typically haughty and conceited Uchiha. Yes, you finally understand why I don't like humans in general very much. I don't like my family, do you? As he made a giant blunted shuriken with his chakra and performed some throwing motions, Naruto responded. I will admit your family doesn't fit the mold that most humans come from. Both you're adopted and biological, however they are more the exceptions that prove the rule rather than the rule. I don't understand, how can a rule be proven by an exception? Confused, Naruto said the Kyuubi were known for their strange, nonsensical sayings. It is a way of saying that one exception doesn't make a generally broad rule false. The fact that your family is nice compared to the rest of the clan just says that the rest of the clan is considered mean in the same way. Because your family is made of good people just means compared to your family the rest of humanity seems bad. The Kyuubi clarified. Despite his intelligence, the child was only 8 years old. Oh, are people really that awful? Naruto, have I ever told you of the origins of the tailed beasts and the true meaning behind the word Jinchuriki? No. Why? Alright. Wait, Naruto, concentrate on your mind's eye. When Naruto felt the urgency in the Kyuubi's voice, he immediately focused his mind's eye of the Kagura on 6 signatures, including Shisui. It felt like he was fighting someone, and he was losing. Naruto leapt to his feet, threw away his enormous shuriken, and ran to where he had last felt Shisui. In the woodland, as he deflected another kunai with his blade, Shisui grunted and considered how he had ended up in this predicament. Shisui had barely escaped that hornet's nest when he went to his commander, Danzo. When the talk of a coup got really bad, Shisui expected Danzo to massacre the clan, but he didn't expect Danzo to try to steal his eyes. Shisui dodged a thrust from one of the aforementioned wasps and ducked sideways, using his tanto to open the root nin's stomach. Using the body as a cover, Shisui shunshined, body flicker, behind another root operative and severed his head from his neck. He grabbed the dying nin's body, spun it around, and used it as a shield to block a volley of shuriken to his left. Shisui ducked beneath a swing that was intended to decapitate him, then struck back with a snap kick that knocked the blank masked root back. He then delivered his tanto, nailing the root in the forehead. With the second to last root falling on him, tip-less tanto swinging, Shisui pulled 2 kunai from his holster. Shisui ducked under a slash and swung his kunai, but the root jumped back. Senses yelling at Shisui spun around, but he was too late to stop the blow that sent him to the ground. The faint sound of one of the men telling the other to take his eyes was all that dazed Shisui could hear. He ducked as a giant blue shuriken with thin blades, think of the kind Obito uses, passed over him after one of the root approached him. As the other root turned to search for their enigmatic assailant, Shisui saw an opportunity and swung a kunai, slitting the closest root's throat before jackhammering him into the ground and shunshining him behind him. Shisui then knelt down, placed his knee on the root's neck, and watched helplessly as he choked to death. I think he channeled some of the Kyuubi's chakra so he could have enough strength to throw that big shuriken, Shisui thought as he looked up and saw Naruto run over with red pupils. Shisui emitted a oof as Naruto gave him a body tack. Shisui, are you okay? I noticed that you were fighting and not feeling well while I was training, so I came to assist in. Shisui laughed and patted Naruto's head to soothe him, saying, yes, please, relax, I'm doing fine, let's get you home. Please, you are aware that leaving the house is not permitted. The head of the Uchiha clan, since this was the first time he had ever used the Kyuubi's chakra, Naruto dozed off on the way back. Shisui put Naruto in bed and proceeded to the living room, where he knew Makoto, Fugaku, and Itachi were waiting. Anything, then? Fugaku inquired. No, he continues to offer us the same bargain: everyone dies, with the exception of Sasuke-chan, Naruto-chan, and the perpetrator. Hell, the jerk even attempted to snatch my eyes. Most likely would have been successful as well if Naruto hadn't arrived at the last minute. Shisui frowned and combed his hair, saying, so we are right back at square one. If things continue this way, it appears that we will have to choose Danzo. I heard other clan members discussing attempting to capture Naruto-kun in order to gain control of the Kyuubi. We're running out of time, but I have a crow pursuing him. I know, Itachi, I know. They were so engrossed in their thoughts as the 4 of them made their way to the clan meeting that they failed to notice a shadow creeping into the house. Naruto had been sleeping in his room 1 minute, and then he was bound and wearing a blindfold the next, and he had no idea what was going on. Naruto remains motionless. Keep them from knowing you're awake. Naruto calmed down and turned his attention inward once more. All right, are you aware of what's happening? Naruto, the people who kidnapped you want to take control of me and destroy Konoha. What? How are you aware? I can tell that people around us are feeling bad. What would you like to do? No one else in Konoha has chakra strong enough to seal you again, so what can we do? If these guys manage to get you, Konoha would be destroyed. To what extent are you prepared to go? What? How far would you go to keep your family safe? Shinobi stands for those that endure, even though you may not be one yet wishing to become a shinobi. Then let me know, how much would you put up with in order to keep your family safe? Naruto closed his eyes and considered his family. He had never been happier than he had been during the last 4 years. His new family came to his aid when he was in hell. They loved him, fed him, clothed him, and brought him into San, Ka-san, Sasuke ni Teme, Shisui Nisan, and Itachi Nisan, who all declined to participate in the coup d'etat, would undoubtedly be killed if these individuals carried out their planned actions. His conviction grew stronger as he thought about the man he killed to keep Shisui Nisan safe. He would stop at nothing to keep those he loved safe and to preserve those tranquil times. I'll put up with anything. What are you able to do? There is not much I can do from within the seal, but your body is not completely accustomed to my chakra just yet. In order to get into your mindscape, they would have to use their Sharingan, copy wheel eye. If I focus enough of my chakra in your eyes, I could probably get your eyeballs to melt. They then may try to break the seal by killing you, but if so, I can just die with you, and it would take me some years to reform. Then take action, steel yourself, Naruto, it will hurt. Naruto didn't even scream once during the entire ordeal. A crow caw sounded from the heavens as Shisui and Itachi were departing the clan gathering. They looked at one another and turned away from the caw's source. Setsuna Uchiha was your average power-hungry Uchiha. He attained the 3 Tomo states despite not unlocking his Sharingan until he was nearly 20 years old. He shared the views of nearly every member of the clan during the last few years as Konoha quietly persecuted the Uchiha. That in Konoha, they ought to rebel and seize what was rightfully theirs. He suggested capturing the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and releasing the Kyuubi on Konoha in order to achieve this. Everything appeared to be going as planned when he and 15 other Uchiha sneaked into the clan head's home and took the brat. However, after they arrived at their hiding place, things took a turn for the worse. They discovered that the brat had somehow melted his own eyes when they removed the Jinchuriki's blindfold. Then everything went to hell when they were going to kill him in order to break the seal. Then Shisui and a resentful Itachi had descended upon them like 2 hungry wolves on a morsel of flesh. All of them were regular clan ninja, a few genin, and mostly Chunin. The angry Anbu captain and his best friend were too strong for them. In a matter of seconds, everyone was dead, including Setsuna, who was struck in the back of the head by a kunai. Naruto heard multiple cries of rage after they took off his blindfold, but he was unable to see what was happening. He heard a sword swish and a body thumping on the ground. After hearing someone suggest that they kill him 10 seconds, the angry Anbu captain and his best friend needed that much time to massacre the entire room, but Naruto couldn't see it. Naturally alarmed by the lack of sight, Naruto exclaimed, Hello? Who's there?" A voice that Naruto recognized as Shisui's exclaimed, "Shit, Naruto, what did they do to you?" Despite the sounds of barely contained anger, a stoic voice said, "I'll stay here with Naruto." Shisui, go to Danzo. I didn't want to do it, but this has gone too far. I won't let my clan harm my family or his village anymore. Hold on, Itachi, if we do that then all the Uchiha will probably have to die, including your parents. No, Itachi Nisan, you can't. There must be another way, exclaimed Naruto. I'm afraid not, Naruto. If the Uchiha clan is put down before the initial strike is made, then it will scare the other clan heads into rebelling, which will lead to a civil war. They have to be completely wiped out and someone would need to take the blame so that they couldn't trace back the order to Konoha. Shisui, I'll give Naruto my eyes and then yo. No, Itachi, I already unlocked the Mangekyo, Kaleidoscope. The only way to obtain it isn't killing your best friend. I'll give Naruto-chan my eyes. Meanwhile, you create a shadow clone and have it bring Sasuke-chan here so we can tell him what's going on. We promised we wouldn't hide anything from them after the Kyuubi. Then afterwards I will use my Koto Amatsukami, distinguished heavenly gods, to seal his memory until he unlocks his Mangekyo, and I'll also tell him how to unlock it without killing the person closest to you. Kyuubi, if you can hear me, I would ask you to seal Naruto's memory. Give me some sign if you understand and can do it. Shisui replied with a calm tone. Naruto managed to pull out only, "What? No, you can't do that, Shisui Nisan. No, please. Before he felt a tiny pinch on the back of his neck. Naruto could still hear Itachi and Shisui's final words as he passed out. When you are ready to start training with the Mangekyo, go to the Naka Shrine in the main hall beneath the 7th tatami mat on the far right, is the secret meeting place of the Uchiha, and there is a tablet containing the clan's secrets and can only be deciphered with the Sharingan. Beware one who calls himself Madara, as I believe it is him who attacked your parents on the night you were born. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. Remember, no matter what, I will always love you. We can do it, Naruto-chan. We can do it because we all care for you. We might not be able to protect your innocence anymore, but we can at least make sure you and Sasuke-chan make it through. This shinobi are people who are willing to endure anything. Naruto-chan, endure for the greater good, endure for peace, endure for those who we care about, because we all love you and care about you. That is why Itachi can endure exile, why Fugaku Ojisan, Makoto Bachin and I can endure even death, because we love you. So you finally decided to do what you had to do to protect the leaf, Danzo replied. With a glare enhanced by Sharingan, Itachi said, yes, but I come with a warning. With his bangs covering his eyes, Itachi lowered his head and said, oh, I would think you're not in much of a position to threaten me. If you touch Sasuke or Naruto, Itachi said, lifting his head to unleash his three-bladed, power-hungry Mangekyo. I will leak information from Konoha to other villages and will personally make sure Konoha burns by my own hands. After Naruto was taken to the hospital, nobody said they could recall who it was. The following month, he remained in a coma. The night that would become known as the infamous Uchiha massacre would take place during that month. Naruto went straight to the top of the Yondaimi's head on the Hokage monument after he recovered and was released from the hospital. Even though it was still very spiky, his red hair had grown while he was unconscious, and many would even say that it had darkened to a nearly blood-red color. He felt strange as he reflected on the massacre, almost as if he had been aware of it before being informed. He felt as though he had already known that Itachi had killed them all, but he was reminded of it. Naruto was too preoccupied with his thoughts to notice that his eyes changed from blood red with 3 tomos to a 4-point star with 4 red lines, and then to a tiny pupil with 6 black concentric circles and an unearthly ice blue glow. Sasuke Uchiha was perplexed. He couldn't understand why his mind was telling him to keep his Sharingan running for 3 days in a row. He couldn't understand why his entire clan was killed. He was perplexed as to why Itachi was the one who had done it, why he had shed a single tear as he fled the village he had once loved following Sasuke's attack with his newly activated Sharingan, and why he felt a sense of comprehension when he considered Itachi killing his clan. He was currently searching for Naruto. His younger brother Naruto was said to have left the hospital nearly an hour ago. Sasuke felt like screaming at the unjust world. However, he was unable to not while he was still needed by Naruto. Sasuke sighed and mentioned that Naruto used to go to the top of the Hokage monument and sit on the Yondaimi's head when he was feeling down when he was first adopted. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and could only see a red hair blob atop one of the Yondaimi's hair spikes. The demon has finally shown its true colors. We have to kill it before it gets the other clans. The demon cannot be allowed another family to ruin. We should take those stolen Sharingan right out of his eyes. While listening to the arguments of the civilian councils, Professor Sarutobi Hiruzen rubbed his head. Despite Sarutobi's repeated claims that Itachi was the one who massacred his clan, they believed they had finally found a reason to put Naruto to death with the Uchiha incident. Sarutobi pulled out his pipe, anticipating that this meeting would take hours. ENOUGH, and immediately dropped it after the rest of them were silenced by a member of the civilian council. In Konoha, Ichiraku Tuchi owned a very well-liked ramen stand because the Yondaime Hokage and his lover used to visit the stand prior to their tragic deaths. It was very well liked since the Yondaime Hokage's passing. Ramen Ichiraku has seen an unusually high volume of patrons annually. Seemingly in remembrance of the deceased Kage, Tuchi became one of the village's wealthiest merchants as a result, and he eventually gained a seat on the civilian council. Years ago, when our Yondaime died to defeat the Kyuubi, many of us felt a great void in our hearts as he was loved by all of us. When we had heard that the Kyuubi had been sealed into an infant, many of us used him as our scapegoat. All the rage we felt for the Kyuubi, all the sadness we felt from the loss of so many loved ones, we all pinned on the shoulders of this poor child. Just so we could feel some measure of payback towards the beast that devastated our homes. Mistreated for 3 years in the orphanage, this poor boy eventually found happiness in family. Even as he was accepted by them, all of us, we still held onto our grudge, so steadfast, so stubbornly, and alienated his family from the village. Now that family is gone, slaughtered by one of the people said boy loved and trusted more than anything in the world. However, instead of trying to comfort him, we are once again trying to place the blame of a tragedy on this poor boy's shoulders. Once again, have we truly fallen so low? Tuchi stood up and went to the door. I for one have never been more ashamed to call myself a citizen of Konoha. The council chambers reverberated with the sound of the door slamming. Naruto sat there staring at the village, not sure how long he had been there. His eyes had returned to their Sharingan shape. At some point he heard footsteps behind him and realized it was quite late in the afternoon. Sasuke had just taken a seat beside him, and the two of them gazed silently at the village. Ka-san told me about you getting Shisui's Sharingan. Sasuke replied. Sasuke went on when Naruto didn't reply. You know, Ka-san and Tu-san edited their wills the night before the massacre. The only thing Naruto could do was shift his gaze to Sasuke. Then Sasuke simply shook his head and sighed when asked, do you think they knew it was going to happen? I couldn't say. The only person who could answer that question is Itachi. What do we do? Sasuke stood up and placed his hands on his hips. Right now, we need to get some food in our stomachs and go to sleep. I mean, what do we do about Itachi? We get strong enough to take him down and get our answers. I think Itachi didn't do this of his own will and someone forced him to do it, Sasuke said with his eyes dilated. A few silent moments went by. The spark returned to Naruto's eyes as he said, then I think we should hide our strength once we get into the academy. Confused, Sasuke asked, why? Naruto's mental gears started to accelerate. Think about it, why are we the only ones left? because Itachi doesn't think we are a threat. We should keep it that way, stay in the academy for the 4 years. With a hand on his chin, Naruto began to pace. On the other hand, we have to consider the possibility that it's our lives that Itachi was protecting. Raising an eyebrow, Sasuke asked, "What do you mean?" Despite Naruto's intelligence, there was very little you could keep from him when he was truly interested. It's simple, someone blackmailed Itachi into killing the clan with our lives, someone with more power than Itachi, or someone high enough in the village structure to order our deaths, blackmailed Itachi into killing his clan, and had he not we would have died. Granted, it may just be a theory, but we should hide our strengths just to be on the safe side. Naruto went into great detail about his Sharingan. I think it may be that before he left Itachi was crying. How much do you think we should hide? Asked Sasuke. One of you should be dead last and the other should be the Rookie of the Year. Those two are always paired together with the highest scoring kunoichi. The Kyuubi responded with kindness. Thank you, Q-chan. Q-chan? One of us needs to be the dead last, and the other, Rookie of the Year. Those two are always placed together on a team. Sasuke raised an eyebrow and asked, so who's going to be dead last? Over the years, he had grown accustomed to Naruto talking to the Kyuubi and dozing off. I think I should be the one to do it. The council already doesn't like me because of the Kyuubi. This is just going to make my reputation even worse in their eyes. If the demon seems to be getting too strong, then they might decide to do something about it. I'll pretend to be the Dobi, let them have a false sense of security. Naruto was standing next to Sasuke. Then maybe hide that we don't hate Itachi too. That seemed like one of the blackmailer's objectives. With his eyes forward, Naruto simply nodded as if to challenge the sky. Sasuke turned on his Sharingan and peered over the horizon where a red dawn was starting to form. We will find the truth. We already know the flaws in this genjutsu. It's just a matter of getting strong enough to break out of it. Naruto said, spinning with conviction. We will bring Itachi back, and if we can't we will go to him. He's our family and I won't let him go when there's even a chance he may come back to us. Recalling the benevolent older brother who would stop at nothing to help him, Sasuke nodded. The two boys would always look back and remember that day as the day their Helicon days were over. As they gazed forward with Sharingans blazing, that they came to the conclusion that family was the most important thing. Not even the village. A 12-year-old Naruto Uchiha opened his eyes to reveal a 3-tomo Sharingan, copy wheel eye, grumbling as the first rays of sunlight touched his face. He rose, proceeded to the restroom, and turned on the shower. He examined himself in the mirror while he waited for the water to warm up. Opening his eyes, he saw an ice-blue Rinnegan, Samara eye, that glowed with untapped power. He had closed his eyes and stopped the flow of chakra he had been feeding them, a force of habit he had picked up over the last 5 years. He had fallen into a depression 5 years ago after waking up from his coma with his brother Uchiha Shisui's eyes, and all he could think about was how his family was no longer there. His brother's eyes had changed into the Rinnegan at some point while he was moping in his anguish. He had tried numerous methods to conceal his eyes after the Kyuubi informed him of their rarity and value, but ultimately he had to content himself with always wearing his Sharingan and constantly feeding it chakra. He essentially had chronic chakra exhaustion for the first year, and the only way he was able to stay alive was to pass out while the Kyuubi infused his veins with some of its chakra. His chakra reserves were so great that even Kisame, the tailless beast, would have been envious. On the other hand, his chakra control was comparable to an elderly person's control over their bowels. He didn't know how to use his Rinnegan at the same time. Other than the strength, speed, and chakra boosts it provided, he really had no use for activating it, and unless it was a life or death situation, it wasn't worth disclosing he had it in the first place. According to what the Kyuubi had told him, the Sage of Six Paths also possessed the Rinnegan. However, because the Kyuubi and the other tailed beasts only came to life while the sage was dying, they were unaware of the potential powers of the Rinnegan. He switched his eyes from the Sharingan to his brother's Mangekyo, Kaleidoscope, and poured more power into them as he entered the shower. Until Sasuke had unlocked his Mangekyo, Naruto and Sasuke had made the decision not to go to the Naka Shrine. When Naruto learned how Shisui unlocked Koto Amatsukami, distinguished heavenly gods, he felt proud of having such a wonderful older brother again, even though he had only used it once or twice himself. By creating fictitious experiences, the technique known as Koto Amatsukami enabled its practitioner to enter the target's mind and manipulate them. It was the ultimate hypnotic genjutsu, unlocked once Shisui had gained a nearly comprehensive understanding of the functioning of the human mind. Naruto would likely never be able to use it to the full extent that his brother could, and when he did, he would only be fumbling through the instructions Shisui had left for him. Naruto went to his dresser and put on his orange jumpsuit after shutting off the shower and drying himself off while letting the chakra drain from his Mangekyo until it returned to its normal Sharingan state. Even though orange was a fantastic color, Naruto's jumpsuit made him look foolish, and he was eager for tomorrow to be assigned to a team so he could burn the damned thing. The masks that Naruto and Sasuke wear in public have been refined over the past 5 years. Naruto was the village idiot who only managed to pass the academy as the dead last because of his Sharingan, while Sasuke was the icy, sulky Avenger with a stick up his ass who won Rookie of the Year together. The two had managed to hide the truth from the entire village, with the exception of a small group of people they both trusted. Naruto saw 13-year-old Sasuke stagger into the dining room, looking like a zombie, as he was heading into the kitchen to begin breakfast. Naruto reflected on how Shisui had unlocked his Mangekyo when he saw Sasuke. Shisui was stationed in a highly sensitive area approximately a year prior to his passing, where he was ultimately compromised. For the next 3 days, Shisui had been battling non-stop to return home while continuously forming chakra into his Sharingan. By the time he returned to Konoha, his Sharingan had evolved into a Mangekyo due to the sardonic amount of constantly molded chakra. Although Sasuke had only been able to hold his Sharingan for a day and a half at most, he was currently attempting to accomplish the same goal. Referring to the seals he created that could cleanse the Kyuubi's chakra and give it to others to re-energize them, Naruto questioned, "So, think you'll need some of the Kyuubi's chakra to get through today?" Naruto and Sasuke had been training in secret at the Uchiha compound for the past few years, and the gifts there constantly reminded them of the genjutsu they carried about the reality of the Uchiha massacre because of their younger bodies. Naruto and Sasuke were both about mid-chunin in strength. However, if they filled out, they would both be easily mid-jonin. Over the previous 4 years, Naruto had begun studying seals and had been zealously protective of his notes. "No, I should be fine. The first year you hypnotized Iruka-sensei so he wouldn't be suspicious about our grades, and then in the second year you took care of Mizuki." During his second year at the academy, Mizuki attempted to steal Naruto's eyes, but before he abandoned him at the I&T department, Naruto had chained him up and hypnotized him into telling the next person who asked him everything. Naruto said, "Yep, and from what I remember of our class scores," while setting the table. He had just finished preparing a traditional Japanese morning meal. "It looks like one of your fangirls is going to be the third person on our team, Haruno Sakura, I think her name was." Sasuke grunted as he started to eat. The entire village was notoriously aware of Sasuke's fan club. When Naruto saw a group of fangirls attempting to swarm Sasuke, he instantly adopted the loud and annoying persona because he was unsure of how to behave in order to avoid the fangirls and arrive at class on time. They frequently had to rely on Naruto's eyes mind of the Kagura. Naruto and Sasuke left for the academy after finishing breakfast and throwing the dishes in the sink. Ninja Academy Konoha. After avoiding a group of fangirls, Sasuke arrived at the classroom and instantly assumed what Naruto had come to refer to as brooding pose number 1, which involved leaning back in the chair with his arms resting on the armrests and his fingers intertwined. In contrast, Naruto hid outside the classroom to ensure that the dobi would arrive late as normal. Naruto shifted slightly when he heard rumbling and saw 2 fangirls, Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura, running down the hallway and attempting to push each other aside so they could enter the classroom first. Naruto couldn't help but sigh at their future teammate as they watched them. She was a fangirl who was utterly useless. She received almost flawless grades in school, but her endurance and taijutsu scores were appalling. To be honest, she wouldn't have been as helpful as an encyclopedia. With an encyclopedia, you could at least outsmart your adversary. With the exception of one, practically every kunoichi in this year's graduating class were enormous jokes. One of the few villagers who was aware of Naruto and Sasuke's actual abilities was Hyuga Hinata. Average results on tests above average shurikenjutsu scores 3 years without a loss in taijutsu. About a week into her first summer vacation, Hinata discovered Naruto and Sasuke training while stalking, which would later become one of her hobbies. She let her guard down and was caught because she was so captivated by the skill they were both displaying. Naruto, who had remembered her from the Kumo incident nearly 9 years prior, asked her to keep what they were doing a secret and whether she wanted to join them, despite Sasuke's suggestion to erase her memory. Naruto noticed right away that the Hyuga gentle fist style seemed too rigid for her. During the first training session, her uncle Hizashi would always pretend that she was training with him. Following that, he and Sasuke developed a more adaptable taijutsu style for her that included the gentle fist but also employed the legs, feet, and elbows, think Muay Thai, to deliver devastating chakra strikes. Hinata had started to win their pure taijutsu matches. Gradually Naruto had responded that they were training to be ninja and that secrecy was a ninja's first and best line of defense. When Hinata had questioned them about why they kept so much to themselves in the academy after that, Hinata also started to hold back just enough to win every academy taijutsu match before demonstrating enough skill to win the respect of her father and the elders of the Hyuga clan. Naruto rushed through the door as soon as he heard the bell ring and Iruka start calling rolls. Naruto grinned broadly and scratched the back of his head, saying, "Hey Iruka-sensei, I'm sorry I'm late, but Sasuke ni Teme forgot to set the alarm." As his fangirls swooned over his coolness, Sasuke said, "That's because I don't need an alarm clock, Dobi." Iruka, accustomed to Naruto's antics, simply gestured for him to take a seat. Iruka started reenacting the role as Naruto took his seat beside Hinata. Fu, did you really need to be so loud, Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, blinking and grinning mischievously as she laughed. Naruto grinned and said, "Of course, how else would they believe me, Hinata-chan?" Sharingan whirled with laughter. Being acclaimed as a taijutsu prodigy on par with Neji, Hinata had earned the respect of many members of her clan over the previous 3 years. She was therefore not a stuttering mess who lacked confidence. Her hair had grown out until it was close to the middle of her back, but she was still wearing her loose sweater. She still had feelings for the redhead, but she had not told Naruto about them despite the fact that she had given him many clues. Sasuke described Naruto as more dense than the steel plating of Kiri's warships. As Iruka started his talk about how they would be real ninja if they passed, Naruto considered a more sophisticated way to deal with the Bunshin clone. Any jutsu that Naruto didn't reverse engineer could not be used. Because of the Kyuubi and his Uzumaki ancestry, his chakra was so much more powerful than the average person's that he typically didn't respond well to standard hand seals. To get the jutsu to work with his chakra instead of just blowing up in his face, he had to completely redo it. He was able to use the henge, transformation, kawarimi, replacement, and shunshin, body flicker. In this way all he intended to do was pack the room full of Bunshin. When Iruka handed out the writing portion of the graduation exam, Naruto, taking inspiration from his shogi partner Shikamaru, filled out half the page almost mindlessly before leaving the other half blank. With an IQ of more than 200, Shikamaru was the height of genius. Unfortunately, he was incredibly lazy. However, he was also the third individual that Sasuke, Naruto, and Hinata trusted with their actual abilities. Instead of Hinata finding them by chance, Shikamaru did so by using only his intellect and keen observational abilities. Small things like Naruto and Sasuke not being winded after endurance training were the first things he noticed, but as he started to pay closer attention, he discovered more and more. Like how Sasuke always received just under perfect scores for everything, or how Naruto always had both of his implanted Sharingans active and still bounced around like a rabbit, while Kakashi, a village jonin with only one implanted Sharingan, could only keep his active for an hour or so before collapsing from chakra exhaustion. Shikamaru eventually confronted them about it, and after Naruto and Sasuke gave him the rundown, he vowed to keep quiet as long as they occasionally stopped by for a game of shogi. After 10 minutes, Iruka gathered the exam papers and led the class outside to take the taijutsu test. With the exception of Hinata almost breaking Kiba's arm for pursuing her, she had made it obvious that she had her eye on someone during her 3rd year, and Naruto, being Naruto, wished her luck and said that any guy would be lucky to be with her. The taijutsu tests went rather smoothly. Sasuke had fought Choji, and Naruto had fought Shino. They returned inside for the ninjutsu portion of the test after the rest of the class had finished. Naruto waited for his turn to complete the tests while yawning at his desk. Naruto, bored, chose to speak with Sasuke. Translation: How long do you think you can hold your Sharingan at this point? So duck butt, how's your pink eye coming along? Almost there, girly boy. Translation: 2 days. Naruto's facial structure is similar to his father's in this story. Oi! Who are you calling girly? You hell, you even have your own Bishonen sparkle. You're not one to talk. Teme, Dobi. Duck butt. Bishonen, you're Bishonen too. It was accurate to say, I know, but I don't have long hair like you. Despite being spiky, Naruto's hair was pulled back into a tiny ponytail that hung just below his neck. When Naruto opened his mouth to yell at Sasuke, he said, the ninjutsu test called for Uzumaki Naruto as his name. Naruto headed down the stairs to Iruka, content to just glare at him. Okay, please preform a henge, transformation, kawarimi and at least 3 bunshin, Iruka spoke in a monotone. Before releasing his henge, Naruto transformed into a replica of the Hokage and then swapped himself for a test log. Then, with focused attention, he closed his eyes and inserted his fingers into a ram seal. Curious about what his pupil was doing, Iruka said, "Naruto, what are you doing?" "Perform the Bunshin." Eyes still closed, Naruto uttered, "Got it, Iruka-sensei, just trying to use as little chakra as I can." Iruka nodded, recalling how Naruto had damaged the chakra measuring device a week prior when he overloaded it with chakra. Naruto opened his eyes after taking a deep breath and exclaimed, "Bunshin no Jutsu." Every square inch of the room was filled with Narutos, and the class stared in stunned silence. Iruka's eyes widened as she said, "Okay, you can dispel them now, Naruto." As he dispelled his clones, Naruto sighed and complained, "I don't understand why the Bunshin is on the test. It basically is a handicap for people with lots of chakra." As he gave Naruto his headband, Iruka remarked, "Well, usually if they have too much chakra they just make sure then 3, even then they don't have as much chakra as you do." Naruto tied the headband around his forehead and said, "TCH whatever." Konoha's Random Street. Naruto and Sasuke discussed the type of sensei they would receive as they made their way back to their house in the Uchiha district. With his hands behind his head, Naruto remarked, "Well, I'm not sure. Q-chan mentioned that we would most likely get that Kakashi guy because he is the only one in the village who is proficient with the Sharingan." "Why do you keep referring to me as Q-chan? We Biju are genderless, as you are aware." "Duno. Even though I am fairly tall for my height, why do you still call me Chibi-kun? You all seem so small to me. I know it irritates you, which is why I specifically gave you that name. Why do you give me nothing but hate when I give you nothing but love? I am giving you my love, but because I'm a Biju it comes out as dry sarcasm." As a tiny rain cloud gathered over Naruto's head and started to pour down on him, Sasuke simply gazed at his younger brother. The training grounds in Uchiha. Sasuke grunted as he kicked his attacker back and deflected a punch with his forearm. The attacker was a ninja in a neon orange jumpsuit. Naruto backflipped and landed on his feet, then focused his chakra into a larger flat-sided shuriken, similar to the kind Obito when he attacked Kakashi, and threw it at Sasuke. Sasuke ducked beneath the flying wheel of death and charged at Naruto, who formed another handheld chakra shuriken and held it in his right hand to block a slash from Sasuke, breaking off the deadlock with a leg sweep. Naruto created another shuriken in his left hand and threw them both at Sasuke. He substituted a trisected log and flashed hand signs ending on tiger. "Gokakyu! Kaden!" Sasuke yelled at Naruto while exhaling a stream of flames. Naruto swiftly drew a seal in the air using his chakra as a marker rather than a brush, and it glowed before consuming all of the fire and vanishing, though some of it had scorched Naruto's clothing. Naruto used chakra to create a chain, which he then sung at Sasuke, who flipped it over and threw kunai, which Naruto deflected with a snap of his chain. Sasuke started to breathe a stream of fire that condensed into a tiny ball in his hand after forming 3 hand seals and ending on half tiger. With wide eyes, Naruto thought, "Oh shit, is he really going to use that here?" and started to erect a barrier out of his chains. Sasuke finished forming the little fireball and threw it at Naruto, saying, "Kaden. Zukaku." The training ground was totally destroyed by the massive firestorm that broke out when the fireball struck Naruto's barrier. Naruto was lying in the middle of the crater created by the technique when the smoke cleared, smoking and burned. As his burned skin started to steam and heal, Naruto remarked, "Udge, you're a jackass. Now you're the one who said, I want this disgrace to be completely unrecognizable after this spar." Sasuke grinned as he approached the brunt redhead. At this point, the jumpsuit was so ruined that it resembled a pair of shorts with one leg longer than the other. "But still, fuck, how did you get along so well with Kaden already? I believed lightning to be your primary component." "It's lightning." Sasuke offered Naruto a hand and remarked, "I only finished Zukaku last night, and it wasn't even close to the full effect." "Not quite the whole impact. What is the entire impact?" Naruto took the hand and asked. "I wouldn't have to throw it and I wouldn't have had to charge it." "Whoa, how is Raiden Jian going for you?" Sasuke frowned at this, saying, "I still can't manipulate the direction it goes or move while I'm doing it." Naruto deactivated his Sharingan to reveal his Rinnegan and said, "May you'll get there." Sasuke asked Naruto a question he had been meaning to ask for some time as he assisted him in limping back to their home. "So what do those Rinnegan let you do anyway?" "To be completely honest, I don't know as of right now. All I know is that it makes me more like each of the 5 nature transformations inside the Naka Shrine. It might have something on it." Now I'll have the Mangekyo in another month or two. Getting used to your daily life's constant drain of chakra is the difficult part. Like you, not everyone is a chakra monster. If you don't remember, I could barely stay awake for the first year. I had my Sharingan on constantly, let alone move for the first month, Naruto complained, giving Sasuke a shady look. Additionally, it depletes a Uchiha's chakra about 10 times as much as it does for a non-Uchiha. I don't see how that's defending you against being a chakra monster. The following day, Naruto, who had thrown away the rest of his heavy orange jumpsuits and put on a set of clothes he had spent the previous year inscribing seals on, tied his hair back into its typical rough ponytail and looked at himself in the mirror. Although it might have appeared to be a typical Chunin uniform without the vest, dark blue pants with white bandages around the ankles and a dark blue shirt with sleeves that ended mid-forearm and 2 red Uzumaki clan symbols on the shoulders, it was actually covered in seals. Seals that made it more durable, seals that made it self-healing, weight seals for training, and a final seal that made the clothes swell as he grew. The dark blue color was chosen so that the seals would blend in more when he ran chakra through the durability seal, which made them appear all over the shirt and pants. It was simple, to be sure, but it worked to complete his ensemble. Naruto wore a dark orange scarf around his neck with a single weight seal embroidered into the stitching because he didn't want to give up his favorite color entirely. After all, Sasuke's strange pastime of knitting had served a purpose. Naruto left for his final day at the academy after tying his headband around his arm. The academy. The apocalypse was approaching, the end was imminent, and this was Kami's signal that it was time to go while the entire class, minus 3 people, kept staring. The red-headed sign resolutely ignored them and carried on reading his sealing book. Anyo. Naruto-kun? Hinata spoke hesitantly as she noticed that everyone was looking at them. Yes, Hinata-chan? Naruto turned and spoke, his smile seeming to sparkle. Hinata continued, blushing a little because she thought Naruto looked great in his new clothes. Everyone is looking at you. Maybe you should have held off on revealing yourself until tomorrow? Now perhaps, but I wanted to give whoever my Jonin-sensei is a positive first impression. That's Naruto-kun, Hinata sighed, he's quiet when he wants to be. Your cheeks appear somewhat flushed, by the way, are you okay? With a look of genuine concern on his face, Naruto asked, and the flush was quickly replaced by a tick mark. Dense with a sickly sweet smile and an aura that promised excruciating pain, Hinata said, Yes, Naruto-kun. I am very okay, she said. Are you okay? Naruto tried to hide behind his book and said, Hey y'all, I'm fine. Iruka entered the classroom to find Hinata glaring at the boy while the entire graduating class was staring at Naruto as though he were an alien. Iruka pondered, Naruto must have had one of Hinata's indications that she liked him fly over his head again. Before he started reading out the names of each team, he cleared his throat and delivered his customary, I'm proud that you are all finally ninja and I hope you have a long and successful career, speech. Team 1. A few seconds later, Team 7 Sasuke Uchiha Naruto and Haruno Sakura insert required fangirl scream. Aohitaki Kakashi will be your sensei. Sasuke and Naruto exchanged a smirk as they looked at one another. Team 8 Kiba Inuzuka Aburame Shino and Hyuga Hinata Yuhi Kurenai will be your Jonin sensei. Team 9 is still in circulation. Team 10 Ino Yamanaka Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji Sarutobi Asuma will be your Jonin sensei. That's all. Your Jonin sensei will be picking you up in an hour, so everyone should return here. Kiba went up to Hinata as everyone stood up to depart, but Naruto stopped him. Pay attention to this dog breath. I'm not personally against you, but I am against you approaching my friend when she is obviously in love with someone else and has repeatedly turned you down. Naruto glared at the Inuzuka boy and said, Now keep it in your pants or else I'll tell your sister. He then waved and winked at Hinata over his shoulder before heading out to catch up with Sasuke. As if he hadn't just been gnawed to death by the dead last, Kiba remarked, Wow, he is really dense, isn't he? Hinata sighed and lowered her shoulders. Yes, he is, but I have chosen him, and even if it means hitting him over the head, I will make him understand. Kiba, I'll see you later. Hinata, later. Waving at Hinata's back, Kiba said, sensing someone's gaze. When he looked up, he saw Shino staring at him with one eyebrow raised. Our goal was to incite jealousy in Naruto clearly didn't work, and I'm okay with just being friends, to be honest. Hinata terrifies me, and I've had enough women in my life to whip me. Shino nodded in comprehension and left the room without saying anything. So what do you want to do for the hour before we meet our sensei? Naruto asked Sasuke as he caught up with him. I don't feel particularly hungry. Neither am I hungry. We could probably go around and learn more about the man. All right, you ask around the village, and I'll go ask Airogigi in about half an hour. Would you like to meet in front of the academy? Faintly recalling his childhood Anbu guard, Naruto asked. Sasuke said, sure. Then the two ninjas vanished in Shunshin's Hokage Tower. How are things going, yo Airogigi? The Sandame Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, turned to the window and saw Naruto smiling, which made him smile. Finally made the decision to come out of hiding, huh? Sarutobi smiled knowingly as he spoke. Well, how did you find out? With a startled expression, Naruto asked. I may be elderly, but I am the Hokage. My boy Sarutobi glared at the stack of papers on his desk and said, now, what did you come here for? I have to get back to this infernal paperwork. Well, I discovered that Kakashi Nissan will be my Jonin sensei. Do you have any information about him? Well, I suppose I could tell you a few things. Aside from the academy, so, what information did you learn about our sensei? That he's a huge pervert and is always late. And is super lazy and values teamwork above all else. And is the only person left in the village with a Sharingan, Sasuke concluded somberly. With a great deal of venom, Naruto said, those idiots in the council probably want him to teach you how to use the Sharingan even though we already know most of the ins and outs of it. Well, at least he will be able to teach us some good jutsu, sighed Sasuke. It is said that he copied more than 1,000 of them. Yeah, but we would first have to pass his test. Examination. Kakashi Nissan has never passed a team during his tenure as a Jonin. According to Airogigi, after the graduation exam, there seems to be another test, and Kakashi Nissan's is really challenging. Nissan? Remember when Hinata and I were on the verge of being abducted in Kumo? He was the one who rescued us from the Kumo Nin. Now what then do we do? Let's wait and get the results of the test. Given how highly he values teamwork, it is likely to be a factor in the test he employs. Kakashi Nissan is 3 hours late for almost everything. Based on what I've been told, what will we do in the interim? Kakashi hummed a song to himself as he walked through the academy's hallways. He was about 3 hours late because he was supposed to pick up a new team. The one he had been failing teams for the previous 2 years. But when he entered the classroom, he was taken aback to see just one bewildered pink-haired genin. Where are your teammates? The man with silver hair questioned his lone genin. Well, sir, I'm not sure. They never returned after taking their lunch break. When Kakashi felt a finger tap his shoulder, he turned to face his two errant genin. Pardon me, sir, do you know the location of our Jonin sensei? The red-haired one said. We were at the hot springs. Looking for him. Ibeo. His name is Hitaki Kakashi, and he is apparently a huge pervert, so they were aware of his whereabouts the entire time. It didn't help that the other one was smirking. Before vanishing in a Shunshin, Kakashi remarked, well, Pinky twitch, duck ass twitch twitch, and Chibi-kun twitch twitch twitch, meet me on the roof. Naruto and Sasuke looked at one another, shrugged, formed the ram hand seal, and disappeared as well. The roof? Do either of you know the Shunshin? Kakashi's eyebrows were raised as he asked. Yes, Dadbeo, we know a great deal. Naruto grinned and said, we just don't go around showing it off like samurai. Now after all, a ninja's best weapon is deception, Sasuke grunted. Naruto grinned less and said, it's good to see you again, Kakashi Nissan. You still think of me, don't you? With a smile on his face, Kakashi answered. Naruto scratched his cheek sheepishly and said, yeah, I never really thanked you for saving me and Hinata-chan, so thanks. Obviously my Otouto couldn't be abducted, could it? In addition, do you know when your teammate will arrive? She's coming up the stairs now. A head of pink hair emerged from the stairs almost at the exact moment. Okay, go sit down on the bench and introduce yourselves. Sakura said, well, what do you want us to say, sensei? Well, your name, your likes, dislikes, hobbies, goals and dreams. Well, can you go first, so we can know how to do it? Okay, my name is Hitaki Kakashi. I like some things, dislike other things. I have no hobbies or goals really. I don't think you're all age appropriate to know my dreams. He just told us his name, the three genin exclaimed, panting. Well, you're next, Pinky. Kakashi pointed at Sakura while he spoke in a bored tone. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like looks at Sasuke and giggles. My hobbies are looks at Sasuke and giggles, and my dream is looks at Sasuke and giggles. With a drop of perspiration, Kakashi remarked, I see. Any dislikes? A fangirl, Sakura said with a joyful expression, no, not really. Okay, duck ass. Scowling, Sasuke replied, my name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like training with my brother, Tomatoes and hawks I dislike, traitors and liars. My goals and dreams are the same, to revive the Uchiha clan and to confront my brother. And finally Uchibi Tomato-kun, odd, the file on him said he was an antisocial avenger with anger issues. A tick mark appeared on his head. Naruto replied, "My name is Uchiha Yu Naruto. I like seals, training with my brother, and foxes. My dislikes are arrogant assholes, traitors, liars, and people who can't tell a kunai from a scroll. My goal is to revive the Uzumaki clan and to confront my brother. My dream is to create a world of peace, a world where people won't have to go through the pain of losing their family." Okay. Whoever handled the Naruto and Sasuke files needs to be let go. They have totally different personalities. Okay, so now we know each other. We will make a good team, if you can pass the survival test, that is. While Sakura was taken aback, Kakashi observed that Naruto and Sasuke appeared as though their suspicions had just been validated. How fascinating, Sakura asked bewilderedly. A survival test? But sensei, we already passed the graduation exam, didn't we? With his Sharingan eyes slowly spinning, Naruto questioned, that was just a test to weed out the absolutely hopeless cases, but there's another test to see who truly has the mettle to be a ninja, isn't there, sensei? When Naruto was being happy and vivacious, his Sharingan was hardly noticeable, but when he became serious, Kakashi observed that it had a genuine intimidating effect. That's right. However, this test only has a 66% fail rate. Only 1 out of every 3 teams pass the test. Will be at 5 a.m. at Training Ground 7. I suggest you don't eat breakfast, you'll just throw it up. And with that ominous note, Kakashi shuns. Sakura, don't go there at 5 a.m. Wait until 7:30 a.m. and make sure to eat a hearty breakfast. Once we are all there, we will devise a plan to take down Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke replied. She was taken aback by the abrupt address and could only nod as Naruto and Sasuke walked away. She remarked absently that she would eventually have to learn that. What do you anticipate the test to be? It will probably be the bell test. Someone Kushina knew was Kakashi's sensei and had given him the same one. Well, I'm not sure what that is, and I'm not interested in finding out. Should I tell him about my Rinnegan, in your opinion? Naruto and Shikamaru were en route to the Nara compound for their weekly game of shogi. Upon recognizing him, the Nara guard unlocked the gate and allowed him entry without any issues. Perhaps Kakashi was very close with your parents, you could trust him. Naruto went over and sat down to start the game after noticing Shikamaru in their usual location with the board ready. Naruto inquired, so how's your Jonin sensei? With a lazy drawl, Shikamaru said, he's troublesome, sounds like he's going to give us some test. Hey, mine too, you better pass, otherwise Yoshino-san will ream you out. When will you tell me about my father, by the way? I believe I'm old enough to understand now. URG, don't remind me. I feel you don't have that final level of maturity just yet. I'll tell you what, how about I tell you, when you get your first kill as a shinobi? To his credit, Naruto was able to suppress his reaction entirely. What? Why? Because while the academy may show you all these fancy little tricks, you're not a true shinobi until you take someone's life. At that moment, as you watch the life drain from their eyes, is the point where you change from a civilian with an understanding of his body's energies to a shinobi. When you do take whatever poor fool's life that is unfortunate enough to be your first kill, look them in the eye, burn that pain, that agony, that hopelessness into your soul, and make sure you never forget it, because they will never forget you. And perhaps if you can remember the emotions on the face of your first murder, to the point where it's not just another kill, you may be able to stay human just yet. You won, Shikamaru exclaimed, his eyes wide. It was once every blue moon at the time. Shikamaru inquired, so what's on your mind? Even though Naruto occasionally prevailed, it was usually due to his autopilot and distraction. Naruto said, his spiky hair drooping, it's just what we will have to do when we eventually become shinobi. So you're worried about your first kill, huh? Well, let me put it the way my pops put it for me. Do not look away from death, it's a natural part of life. When you have your first kill, make sure to look them directly in the eye, feel all the emotions that the person you're killing feels. That way you can at least stay human, because if you can ever kill another human being without feeling anything, then I don't want to know you anymore. Naruto said, I see, with a peculiar expression on his face. Well, I'll see you next week, Shika. If both our teams pass, we should get together and train sometime. Alright. Later, the training grounds of the Uchiha clan. Should we really be training before our big test? Naruto asked while using a claymore to practice some katas. Sasuke fired off a Raiden, Jion, and said, it's okay, you have the Kyuubi and I can heal myself with medical ninjutsu. Naruto grunted, his muscles burning from the strain, but still, Kakashi Nissan is probably the strongest Jonin in the village right now. We should make sure we go in at 100%. No, I don't think they would let a Jonin, let alone the strongest Jonin in the village, fight genin at full power. As he finished his katas and dispelled his chakra blade, Naruto remarked, "Whatever, I'm just about done, so I'll head back early. I'll see you later." Naruto went home, got into bed, and set his alarm clock for 7:15 after hearing the traditional HN. The following morning, Naruto considered telling Kakashi about the Rinnegan as he got up and walked to the training area following a brief breakfast. Sasuke was the only other person who was aware of it. He had gone to considerable measures to ensure that only Sasuke and the Kyuubi were aware of it. When Naruto arrived at Training Ground 7, he saw Sakura and Sasuke sitting on the bridge, talking about something with his mind's eye directed outward. Naruto attempted to locate Kakashi. Maybe he was putting them to the test already? To Naruto's surprise, though, he discovered Kakashi standing miles away. Naruto walked to his teammates after they waved him over, shaking his head to get rid of the strange habits his sensei had. Sakura inquired, "So what do you think the test will be, Naruto?" "Probably something to do with teamwork. Keep that in mind when Kakashi-sensei tells us what the test is," Naruto replied. "How do you know it will be something about teamwork?" Sasuke inquired. Naruto scratched his cheek and remarked, "Well, Konoha is known for how well its shinobi work together, and like I told you before, teamwork is one of the things Kakashi-sensei values. During the test we should make sure to stick together then," Sasuke replied. "Not quiet. Gigi told me that Kakashi hadn't passed a team yet, so he probably will try to trick us in some way," Naruto noted. Behind them, a voice said, "Oh, and who is this Gigi?" "Ga." All three genin jumped when they saw their sensei across the room. Kakashi grinned and said, "Hello to you too, my potential kawaii genin." With his Sharingan automatically activated, Sasuke asked, "When did you get here, Kakashi-sensei?" Kakashi removed a clock and 2 box lunches and wrote them on a training log, saying, "Just now. We can begin the test now." Kakashi held up 2 silver bells that he had fastened to his waist and said, "You have until midday to get these bells. Anyone who doesn't get a bell will be sent back to the academy and tied to the stumps while they watch the others eat." "Did you all eat breakfast even though I told you not to?" he asked, raising an eyebrow when he didn't hear any growls from their stomachs. "Not quiet, Kakashi-sensei. You suggested we not eat breakfast. You didn't actually tell us not to." Naruto brought this up. I see. Make sure you come at me with the intent to kill, otherwise you'll never get a bell." Sakura questioned, "But sensei, wouldn't you get hurt?" Sasuke smirked and spun Sharingan around, saying, "No, if he could be beat by a team of genin he wouldn't be a jonin." The 3 kids vanished as Kakashi pulled out his book and said, "Well, ready, start." As Kakashi read his book, he thought, "Well, at least they're decently hidden." He swung his head back and snapped his book shut before a huge blue shuriken could cut it off as it passed over him. I can't say I've ever seen that before." Naruto directed his chakra into his arm as he loudly dropped his weighted scarf to the ground. As his chakra shaped into chains and emerged from his arm, Naruto remarked, "Then you probably haven't seen this either." He then swung the chains at Kakashi, who danced through them. Naruto created a claymore by spreading his chakra chains before launching himself at Kakashi. Kakashi thought to himself as he started to dodge Naruto's blows, even Kushina Nisan didn't have this level of control over her bloodline. Fascinating. When Naruto realized that close combat was not working, he leapt back and threw his claymore at Kakashi, who step-sided it nonchalantly. Naruto said, assuming another ready stance, "Phew, you're good." "Well, if I wasn't I wouldn't be a jonin." Naruto smirked and made a half-ram seal, saying, "You didn't let me finish your good." Kakashi tried to dodge when he heard, "Kaden. Gokakyu," but was unable to do so because of a glowing seal on the side of his arm. "But you're not that good." "Oh no," as a huge fireball struck the area where he was standing, Kakashi remarked, "Hokage-sama told me they were better than they let on, but I didn't expect Naruto to already know seals." Sasuke emerged from the foliage and stood back to Naruto, saying, keep your guard up, Naruto. You know that wasn't enough to kill an A-rank shinobi." Naruto looked around with his Sharingan and said, "I know I saw him molding some chakra before the fireball hit, but I couldn't figure out what jutsu he used. Not above us, not east or south, not north or west." Then down. Both boys yelled, leaping away as 2 hands appeared on the floor. Kakashi lifted his headband to show his closed Sharingan eye and said slowly, You both have your Sharingans active, but I don't. Let's even the score a bit." The redhead to Kakashi's right nearly blinded him when he opened his Sharingan eye. Waves of chakra were emanating from the child, filling the surrounding atmosphere. Kakashi believed that the Kyuubi's regenerative abilities had reduced the amount of chakra it required from Naruto compared to its usual usage. When he learned that Naruto had received 2 transplanted Sharingans, Kakashi was mistaken. It felt like someone had just shone the brightest light in the world into Naruto's eye because he had been suffering from the constant drain from 2 implanted Sharingans for nearly 4 years. With a drop of perspiration, Kakashi lowered his headband over his eye once more and said, "Okay, never mind." They were ahead now. Kakashi thought Genin took down the statement. "I really need to get myself back in shape because I can't use my Sharingan without getting blinded, and I can feel Sasuke and Sakura using Genjutsu on me at this rate. I'm not going to last, how embarrassing." Kakashi was trying to come up with a plan when the ground erupted and chains sprang out. Enclosing him in a barrier, he noticed chains entering the ground just outside the barrier and emerging from behind Naruto's back. As he looked to his right, he watched from his left as Sasuke breathed a stream of fire into a tiny fireball in his hand after completing 3 hand seals on Tiger. That's a shit. Kaden, Zukaku, and the world of Kakashi burst into flames. When Kakashi came to, he felt as though he was bound and that the worst of his burns were being treated by someone. He moaned in his head as he recalled what might have caused this predicament. "I'm never going to hear the end of this if it gets out," the speaker said. "Even though they showed teamwork, the 3 of them weren't supposed to beat me." One of the voices Kakashi recognized as Sakura's asked, "So how long until Sensei is healed?" He should be waking up soon. You were right, Naruto. He does rely on his Sharingan way too much. He didn't even notice the Genjutsu Sakura was putting on him until you broke it when you created the barrier. I don't really deserve any credit, Sasuke-kun. You and Naruto-san did all the work. Even the Genjutsu I used was Naruto's idea. Don't worry about it, Sakura-chan. I'm sure that since we beat him he'll pass us even if we didn't get the bells. Kakashi groaned and made the decision to speak up, asking, "What happened to the bells?" He opened his first eye. Naruto held up 2 pieces of charcoal while he scratched his cheek and laughed sheepishly. Raising an eyebrow, Sasuke questioned, "So do we pass?" Nodding toward Naruto, Kakashi sighed and said, "Yeah, the test was meant to get you to show teamwork and you did. Granted, you weren't supposed to beat me. On a side note, how do you deal with the red-headed walking searchlight over there?" Sasuke shrugged and grinned, ignoring Naruto's angry yell. "I had 5 years to get used to it, but you do need to do something about situations where the enemy can do something to your Sharingan that was pathetic, to be honest." Kakashi sighed once more and put his head down to wait for Sasuke to finish healing him. Yeah, I get it. Practice Area 7. Gah. Damn it. That was the voice of Naruto, who had red hair and was attempting to make a compressed sphere of chakra explode in his face once more. 1 week had passed since they were renamed Team 7. Naruto and Sasuke had strongly objected to Kakashi's insistence that they engage in team-building activities when they weren't performing D-rank missions. Tasks. The brothers could see that they were wearing Kakashi down, even though he still refused to train them in person. At the moment, their 3rd teammate was reading an anatomy book while the brothers practiced while they waited for their sensei to arrive. At first, Sakura was a huge fangirl, but Sasuke insisted that being a shinobi was risky and that, although he wanted to keep her safe, he didn't want to have to do it all the time. Naruto looked into the river and saw his Mangekyo activated once more, huffing at the fact that he was still unable to perform the Bijudama. "Hey, it appears that the 4-pillar reverse consumption seal will be upgraded. My Mangekyo is beginning to reactivate at random. Just make sure you consult the sage when you get a chance." About 2 years ago, Naruto's chakra started to become uncontrollable, so he and Jiraiya came up with the 4-pillar reverse consumption seal. As a result, some of the chakra that Naruto had used began to flow back into the Kyuubi and the seal. To its eternal shame, the Kyuubi had, for lack of a better word, behaved like Naruto for a week when they first used it in order to prepare it for the influx of humanized chakra. They now forewarned it before acting. Currently, Naruto would channel 28% of his chakra back into the Kyuubi. Although it accomplished its goal, it also had the regrettable side effect of making Naruto's chakra coils even larger, necessitating 3 increases in flow back. Naruto raised his shirt and used chakra to watch as the 4-pillar reverse consumption seal materialized, overlaying his 8 trigram seal with the kanji for 28 in the middle. As his Mangekyo returned to its typical Sharingan state, Naruto stopped channeling chakra and allowed it to vanish after twisting it to the right until it read 34. As Kakashi emerged, Naruto sighed. Who'd thought having too much chakra could be a problem? Now you understand why a Biju's arsenal consists of gathering chakra into a sphere, compressing it and blowing everything to hell. By the way, I appreciate you teaching me the Bijudama. It's fine while you can't blow everything to hell like us Biju can. Your smaller version is acceptable for a human. Kakashi smiled and said, Hello my kawaii little genin, are you ready to do more teamwork exercises? I don't understand why you have us doing these, if anything you're only alienating Sakura more, Sasuke sighed. Raising an eyebrow, Kakashi questioned, oh what do you mean? Sasuke calmly explained, although there were hints of annoyance in his voice, simple because Naruto and I already have great teamwork. The only reason you would be having us do these teamwork exercises all the time is because of Sakura, meaning that the reason you're not teaching us anything is also because of Sakura. Naruto, do you feel the same way? Kakashi asked, turning to face Naruto. Naruto pointed to his chakra burns and said, not really, but if you don't start helping me soon then I might accidentally kill myself because I mess up a jutsu and then Sasuke will really hate you and Sakura. I would never let you die from something as stupid as that. I understand, but they don't. After observing Sakura's terrified expression, Kakashi sighed and said, all right, let's work as a team for the first hour. If you guys are good enough, we can do other things. Naruto raised his arms in the air and yelled, good enough. Good enough. It was Sasuke and Sakura that helped me put Tora in your shower 3 days ago for always being late. Kakashi's visible eye glowed with a sadistic light as he turned to face Sakura and Sasuke, who had started to perspire. I see, then let's begin with some warm-ups then. A man with a bowl cut and large eyebrows, wearing green spandex and a chunin vest, paused and turned to face the sky across the village. I feel a disturbance in the springtime of youth, almost as if someone's youth screamed out in horror, before it was suddenly silenced. At training ground 7 2 hours later, Sakura lay face down on the ground and said, please, huff, huff, sensei, let me rest huff, huff, or kill me, I really don't care at this point. As he lay on his back, Sasuke grunted, huff, n. Before he got up and resumed his run, Naruto remarked, I'm going to go do another lap, I'm not really tired yet. The rest of Team 7 couldn't help but perspire as they stared at the back of the redhead with seemingly endless endurance. Sakura's eyebrows twitched as she said, huff, there is something, huff, wrong with that boy. Sasuke added, huff, there is a reason why, huff, we don't have any coffee or sweets in our house. Kakashi remarked almost casually, well, at least he's going to have a very happy girlfriend someday. When Kakashi noticed Sakura staring at him incredulously, he simply said, what? Sakura asked, her eyes wide, her cheeks slightly flushed, did you really just say that about a 12-year-old? Before turning to face Sasuke. Sakura nearly cried out, and you? That's your brother he's talking about. Sasuke simply shrugged, still not getting off the ground yet. His godfather is a self-proclaimed super pervert. You get used at hearing about it eventually. Hell, part of the reason we decided that I would be the one who'd be Rookie of the Year and get a fan club is because if his godfather ever heard that Naruto had fangirls he would never let it go. So what did you want to learn exactly? Kakashi interrupted, deciding to refocus the training. Sasuke mumbled something. I know Naruto wants to know about elemental training and manipulation because otherwise he can't use ninjutsu due to his extremely powerful chakra. Right now the only thing he can do, other than his weapons creation, is compress his chakra and use it like a bomb. I want to learn some basic elemental manipulation, but I want to focus on my speed. I never thought I would see the day when someone has too much chakra to do jutsu, said Kakashi, shaking his head. Sasuke sighed as he stood up, but that's not the main problem. It's his chakra being so dense and powerful that he can't use standard hand seals to mold it to learn jutsus. He would have to completely re-engineer them. Kakashi rubbed his chin and muttered, I see, and his dense chakra is how he creates those weapons he always uses in spars. So if Naruto is lightning-natured, he would be just a few steps away from Chidori because his chakra is so dense. Sasuke grunted and turned to Sakura, saying, so what do you want to learn, Sakura? If you want to learn about medical ninjutsu I can teach you the basics. You would probably be a better medical ninja than me because of your smaller reserves. Sakura smiled, blushing, I'd like that. Sighing, Sakura said, really now that I know how strong you and Naruto truly are I am starting to feel really inadequate. Naruto simply shook his head and waved his hand after hearing Sakura's words as he jogged in. Don't worry about it, Sakura-chan, we are actually pretty averages as far as shinobi go, we just train a lot. Average shinobi don't throw around B-ranked Kaden and Raiden jutsus before they're 14, nor did they have so much chakra and such powerful chakra that it actually stops them from doing justus. Sakura was deadpanned. Naruto could only scratch his head sheepishly while laughing. Kakashi chose to start things off by shaking his head. Okay Naruto, I heard from Sasuke that you're interested in elemental manipulation. Not well, I'll get you started on that. Do you know what your elemental affinity is? Another nod. Okay, that saves time. Sasuke, you go get Sakura started on medical ninjutsu and meet back in 2 hours. Let's break. Alongside Sakura and Sasuke. Now, Sakura, let's practice molding your chakra. Medical ninjutsu is the use of chakra to manipulate the body of another person or yourself. As a result, it requires a thorough understanding of human anatomy. The first test to become a medical nin is to revive a dead fish. I'll teach you the fundamentals, but you'll need to go to the hospital to receive actual training. With Kakashi and Naruto. Okay, Naruto, tell me about your elemental affinity. Kakashi inquired in a disinterested manner. Can you keep a secret, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto scratched the back of his head and asked. It depends. Does the village, your teammates, or yourself face any risks as a result of this secret? No, no and no. Kakashi grinned and said, then I don't see why not. Naruto closed his eyes and said, okay. They had an ice blue glow and a tiny pupil with 6 concentric rings when he opened them. What is that? A little alarmed by the strange-looking eyes, Kakashi inquired. They're known as the Rinnegan, and to be honest, I don't know what they do other than make me feel a connection to all 5 elements. I wear my Sharingan all the time to conceal my eyes, which are in this base form. With people like Danzo running around, it was natural for Kakashi to want to keep it a secret. I see, he said. Naruto asked, turning his Sharingan back on him, so, which element would you like to begin with? I was already born on this planet by Arrow Sennin. Kakashi regained his focus after shaking off the surprise. Arrow Sennin? Must be Jiraiya-sama. Well, since lightning is my primary element, I suppose I'll start you on it then. In addition, there is a jutsu that I believe would be ideal for you because of your naturally dense chakra. After you both complete the first step, I'll show it to you and Sasuke later so you both have a good idea of what to do. Kakashi gave Naruto a leaf from a tree and said, alright, Naruto, to develop a lightning affinity, you should vibrate your chakra to make it more powerful and swift. Applying it to a leaf produces the following effect. Kakashi held a leaf between his palms for a brief moment, and when he opened them again, the leaf was fully wrinkled up. I'll show you the jutsu once you can complete this task in under 2 minutes. I've heard that you can't create clones without creating 100 of them. Naruto nodded, tucked the leaf between his palms, and sat down, his expression focused. All right. In the interim, though, I'll demonstrate Kage Bunshin, a jutsu that you can use in place of Bunshin but don't use it excessively. Why? Confused, Naruto said. Unlike other clones, the Kage Bunshin is unique although it is extremely chakra intensive. I can't create more than 4 in a single day. It creates a solid clone by dividing the user's chakra in half, and any memories the clone acquires are returned to the original once it is dispelled. Thus, if you use it excessively. With a drop of sweat, Naruto remarked, my already uncontrollable chakra will get even worse. That is correct. How many you use for training is up to you, but keep in mind my warning. Here's what you want to do when you dispel your clones. After 2 hours, Sakura was able to perform the fundamental Mystic Palms Jutsu, and Naruto's clones were able to wrinkle the leaf in 5 minutes when Team 7 reconvened on the training ground. Sasuke and Kakashi were training together while Naruto and Sakura were away doing their respective things. After teaching him how to perform the basic leaf exercise for lightning, they moved on to training his speed, and by training I mean Kakashi beating the living daylights out of Sasuke. Sasuke let out a oof as a fist dug into his stomach, and he attempted to avoid the kick that sent him airborne, but he was too slow and fell flat on his back. Kakashi turned to face his students and said, okay, take a 10-minute rest if you need to, we will go do some D ranks until the afternoon. Sasuke sat up and started healing himself. Sakura stopped molding medical chakra and collapsed on the grass, and Naruto grunted as he shifted into a meditative stance while sitting and dispelled his clones, preparing to sort out the influx of information. Naruto encountered Hinata and Team 8 in a dango hut while he was making his way there. Sasuke had been abducted by a group of fangirls, among them Sakura. Hi, Hinata-chan. Naruto waved and yelled as he approached the previously mentioned team, smiling foolishly. How are you and your group doing? Era Naruto-kun. Hinata grinned as she spoke. I'm doing well, Hinata-chan. Naruto turned to the other members of Team 8 and bowed briefly to each of them before saying, good afternoon, Yuhi-san. Dog breath. Hey, Shino-san. We finally got our lazy ass of a teacher to teach us something. Good afternoon. Kurenai grinned and said, Naruto-san, but Shino merely nodded. Hey, I don't have terrible breath, Kiba protested. The stoic response from Shino was, yes it is. Sorry, Kiba-kun. Hinata grinned as a tiny rain cloud gathered over Kiba's head. Kurenai remarked, I think it's a part of your unique character. Arf. As a lightning bolt from the rain cloud struck Kiba in the head, Knocking him from his seat, Akamaru completed the combo. When Hinata looked around after turning away from the sobbing Kiba, she saw that something was missing. "Anyo Naruto-kun? Your team is where?" Kakashi went to do something, Naruto said, scratching his cheek. "I came here to get some dango for when he gets home later tonight because Sasuke kind of got kidnapped by some fangirls on our way back. Whatever it is Kakashi does in his free time." "Bullshit, the Uchiha was tripped by you. You even gave him a sly smile while he was being pulled into the crowd." "No, I didn't. I'm in your head, boy, don't lie to me. I am aware of everything that occurs up here." "Well, he gave me the name Kai." "Wait, really? Everything?" "Yes, everything. You wouldn't tell Ero Sennin about it if I ever managed to free you from the seal." "Maybe. How about Sakura?" Shino raised an eyebrow in question. "I believed I had brought up the fangirls as the members of Team 8, with Kiba absent, all developed perspiration on their heads," Naruto spoke, appearing strangely innocent. "So, how are things going, Hinata?" Naruto turned to smile at her, complete with Bishonen sparkles. "You were missed like we did in the academy. We ought to reunite and spend some time together." Hinata blushed and said, "I missed you to Naruto-kun and I'd like that." The fact that Naruto was totally unaware of Hinata's crush on him amused Kurenai a little. Indeed, Naruto was the only person in Konoha who was unaware of the Hyuga heiress's crush. Although the majority of the populace disapproved of it, many shinobi supported it because Naruto was the last member of an extinct clan, and there was even a betting pool for when he did. The next mission in their line of work could be the last, and you never knew when you'd return home in a body bag. She herself had bet around 16 teenagers, especially shinobi, typically did the dirty work at that age. Hinata was very much like her mother, and it also helped that she had heard a rumor about how Haishi's wife had jumped him after growing weary of his stoicism. "In any case, I'll see you guys later." As he was given a bag of dango and departed, Naruto uttered those words. The home of Naruto and Sasuke in the Uchiha district. "I hate you." "What? An accident occurred." "Bullshit, before the fangirls pulled me away, I caught you grinning at me." "At least you were able to leave with Sakura?" "After she spent 5 minutes drooling over me and as I was dodging the more rabid fangirls." "Really? I assumed they would have gagged and bound you." "What?" I apologized. "Okay. Vengeance will be exacted, not today, perhaps not tomorrow, perhaps not this week, perhaps not this month, perhaps not even this year, perhaps." But as he finished the dango, Sasuke said, "But there will be vengeance." His eyes were dark. Naruto attempted to shift the subject by saying, "Eha, why don't we get started on that exercise Kakashi-sensei gave us?" Training Ground 7 the following day. "Okay. Sasuke and Naruto, how far along are you with the leaf exercise?" Recalling that Sakura was at the hospital to assist her with medical ninjutsu and would be joining them at midday, Kakashi remarked, "I know you both practiced it when you went home last night." Naruto smiled and remarked, "Well, with clones I was able to get it down to 2 minutes." "And what was the number of clones you used?" In a deadpan tone, Kakashi inquired. "He made use of 30." Sasuke remarked, "I'm down to 2 minutes too." "How did you?" "Sasuke, you got it so quickly." I am aware that Naruto employed the Kage Bunchi. "For the past 2 years or so, I have been practicing lightning jutsu in our spars in addition to my innate affinity. My chakra was already conditioned to be more lightning-natured," smirked Sasuke. "I see. Listen, Naruto, Sasuke, this jutsu I'm about to teach you, it's not a blade to kill your enemies, it's a blade to protect your precious people. A blade so that those you hold dear aren't taken away from you. Promise me that you'll wield this blade not for vengeance or for glory, but to protect your precious people." Naruto and Sasuke couldn't help but nod when they saw the haunted expression in their sensei's eyes. After getting 2 nods, Kakashi performed 3 hand seals, landing on Monkey, and then he used his left hand to grasp his right. Kakashi felt a surge of white lightning that gathered in his palm before condensing and encircling his hand. "I'm going to teach you my only original jutsu, the Chidori, 1000 birds, assassination technique, which is an A-rank technique. I'll teach you my version of Chidori once you've achieved a Jonin rank and sufficient skill in this area." The focus appeared to turn blue as the lightning dancing around Kakashi seemed to get more intense. The Raikiri, lightning cutter, he couldn't help but laugh when he saw the gleaming glances that Sasuke and Naruto were giving him. "I still have it. Now, when I used the Chidori, could one of you tell me how my chakra appeared?" Sasuke noted right away, "It was super condensed around your hand." "That is correct." "What were the actions of the hand seals?" "It changed the nature to lightning and condensed the chakra. It's the ideal jutsu for me." Naruto's eyes brightened and he realized. "Kakashi-sensei, Thank you, Naruto remarked as he and Sasuke were already concentrating their chakra and going through the hand seals. Just remember what I said about the Chidori. It's a blade to protect what you hold dear. After a few weeks, training ground 7 with both eyes closed and uncovered, Kakashi stood in the center of the training area. His body was tense. With a kunai in one hand and his arms hanging at his sides, there was no sign of his typical icha-icha. Kakashi ducked as a giant chakra shuriken passed over his head, mismatched eyes snapping open, and then turned to parry a kunai slash, snapping his duck-haired attacker back and jumping back as 2 chains crashed into his position. When he heard something swishing through the air, Kakashi blocked a punch, turned to face his red-haired, now whiskered assailant, and was struck in the face by an orange foxtail. He did a backflip and started running through seals after noticing Sasuke doing the same. As they fired streams of lightning in each other's direction, they both exclaimed, "Raiden! Gion, lightning style! False darkness!" and finished their hand seals simultaneously. In a taijutsu match, Kakashi kept an eye on Naruto's hands to prevent him from placing a seal on him after sucker punching Naruto. Kakashi landed a very hard spin kick to his head to knock him back before jumping back as a stream of lightning crashed into where Kakashi was standing before. Kakashi's attack should have overwhelmed Sasuke because he is the older and more experienced shinobi, and it would have if he hadn't had to release his jutsu to avoid having a seal placed on him. When the fireball struck him and exploded, smoking timber fell out of the smoke, signifying a kawarimi, body replacement. Kaden. Gokakyu, fire style. Grand fireball, Sasuke said, breathing out a huge fireball at the airborne Kakashi. Sasuke then extended his senses to search for Kakashi. Sasuke felt someone behind him and turned to see Kakashi standing directly behind him, avoiding the fist that was aimed at his soleus plexus. Sasuke punched Kakashi in the face. Kakashi ducked around Sasuke's arm, then pulled violently, dislocating his shoulder in the process. Sasuke started channeling lightning chakra to the arm that was still entwined with Kakashi's while he bit back a cry of pain. Kakashi jerked, feeling the lightning chakra running through his body, and then he kneed Sasuke in the stomach to knock him unconscious. I couldn't help but snicker when I saw Sasuke slump over Naruto. This was Anbu Captain Kakashi's power, not the pitiful loser they had battled for their final Genin exam. Using more of the Kyuubi's power until the one-tailed cloak formed, battle was joined. Sakura reset the bones in Naruto's arm, and a battered Naruto swore, "Jackass." Even though he was still smoking a little from Sasuke's last attack and had lost his headband and vest, Kakashi said casually, "You're the one who wanted to fight me at my full power." With a grunt, Sasuke held his dislocated shoulder. It's hard to believe that just a few weeks ago, Naruto and I could have easily defeated you." After finishing Naruto's healing, Sakura moved to Sasuke. "I think that's a good thing," she said. "Sensei wouldn't have become so much stronger if he hadn't begun training with us. It's not so much I'm getting stronger so much as I'm regaining what I've lost. These past few years out of Anbu really took their toll," Kakashi said without displaying any visible emotion. "Well, I thought you were a little weak for an Anbu captain. What was that strange power Naruto was using, by the way?" Sakura inquired. "The Kyuubi was that I have it sealed inside of me," Naruto remarked. Sakura shrugged and said, "Oh okay, really, oh, just okay. Why don't people respond in a way that will allow me to mock them later?" Naruto, who had been healed, bouncing up and down, said, "I learned about Jinchuriki from the lectures we had in class. Since my fangirl tendencies began to fade a week after our team was formed, I must admit that I discovered the Kyuubi had a Jinchuriki. Granted, I had assumed he would be an introverted social misfit or a loudmouthed idiot. To be honest, you're pretty well-rounded when compared to the Jinchuriki stories I've heard from other countries. Additionally, using its power only results in the growth of a tail and whiskers. In any case, what's the matter? That was my first episode of Jinchuriki. Huh? What other Jinchuriki stories are there? I never heard any," said Naruto, perplexed. "That's strange. I would constantly hear about them from my parents." Sakura shrugged and said, "I was actually afraid of them when I was younger, but it's not that surprising now that I know how they were treated." As she finished healing Sasuke, Salora said, "Well, you have Suna, who's Jinchuriki, who kills anyone who looks at him the wrong way. Iwa's Jinchuriki despises humanity. Kumo's Jinchuriki seems to have a rap fetish, and the Mizukage is likely one of the worst." Sakura shivered as she said, "He ordered the genocide of all bloodline users and caused Kiri to erupt into a civil war." With wide eyes, Naruto wondered, how could all of them be like that? What happened? "Because we get along better than Biju and Jinchuriki usually do. For a second, picture yourself not being adopted by the Uchiha because of Konoha's disregard for your father's sacrifice and self-interest. You would not be the same person you were today. most likely lacking faith in people, but since you were adopted by the Uchiha family, your family's love overcame your animosity toward the village. Imagine, however, that you were unaware of that love and that our relationship was, at most, hostile. You would have become as your female teammate said and probably never even have figured out your parentage. As Sakura-chan completed healing their sensei, Naruto said to his female teammate, "Yeah, that's probably true, Sakura-chan. But why didn't I sense anything from your chakra? I would have assumed it felt like bloodlust incarnate based on the stories the adults told me," Sakura remarked. That stems from the idea that a Biju's chakra is part of its will, although that is true if the Biju is actively attempting to seize control. If not, its power is simply energy in its most unadulterated state, which typically makes the Jinchuriki's desires more intense. Usually, they are just as you described, and because people don't want to acknowledge that they are to blame for the Jinchuriki's current state, they simply claim that it's the Biju, Naruto said, his face sad. "Naruto, how do you know all of this?" Sakura raised an eyebrow in response. 12 years ago, the attack was not carried out by the Kyuubi, that's all I'll say, Naruto said as he and Sasuke got to their feet, and Sakura nodded in agreement. Kakashi stood up and stretched his muscles, saying, "All right, rest for a few minutes while I go get another vest from my house. We'll then go on some missions when I return." "This is Cyclops, everyone is position. This is Cherry, I'm in position. HN, Duck ass in position. Why couldn't I just make a clone for this? Because it's not fair that you get to train while the rest of us have to do these chores. Now are you in position, Chibi?" "Not a Chibi, I'm in position, then converge on the target." Out of the shadows jumped 3 figures after avoiding the first figure and leaving some scratches in its wake. The target headbutted the second figure between the legs, causing him to collapse with a wheeze, and then leapt into the arms of the third. When Naruto noticed his 2 teammates moaning on the ground, he laughed sheepishly and scratched the back of his head. Tora seemed to like him for some reason, but anyone who came near her would suffer greatly. Target captured. Ribbon confirmed on left ear. Mission to capture Tora complete. Hokage Tower. The daimyo's wife remarked, "Oh my precious Tori, how I missed you," as she sent Tori to Marshmallow Hell's lowest level. Squeeze. Squeeze. Wherein his teammate, who had claw marks all over her face, and a certain duck-haired Uchiha, who was still limping, had somewhat murderous thoughts. Sarutobi grinned and said, "Thank you for another mission, well done, Team 7. The way the demon cat injured everyone but Naruto struck him as strange, making a certain cat-like girl, Naruto's fiancé, feel more at ease around our favorite redhead seemed like a cliched plot device. The author would need to be extremely lazy to do something like that if this were a story. Don't pass judgment on me," Sarutobi thought. "I really should tell Naruto about his fiancé soon, otherwise, she might unexpectedly appear in a packed room and declare Naruto to be her spouse. That would be awkward. Man, that things only occur in bad harem manga is a good thing. The Hyuga heiress, after all, is the only other girl who has such a strong affection for Naruto." Naruto heard his tenant sneeze and thought, "Bless you. Thank you. How odd, there isn't even dust in here. Why would I sneeze? Perhaps someone had you on their mind. With all due respect, Hokage-sama, says Sasuke, shifting his legs with a grunt. I think that these D ranks are not helping us improve as shinobi. I would request we receive a better mission, as Naruto has told me that you already know of our true level of skill," he said, unable to display his Uchiha pride while holding his package. The Konoha Hokage merely laughed. Weeks earlier, he had anticipated this, and from Naruto instead of his stoic teammate. "Very well, I had expected this earlier, to be honest. Here is a C-ranked mission to escort a client to the wave and guard him until the completion of the bridge he is building. It should take about a month. Come in, Tazuna-san." They didn't expect to be protecting a prince or princess for their first C rank, but they did expect something better than an elderly man who smelled like sake, so Team 7 was quite disappointed when the client arrived. "What? These brats are going to be protecting me?" "Yes, Team 7 will be escorting Tazuna the bridge builder to the land of waves where his next bridge is to be built, and will stay for the duration to protect him and the bridge from any bandits or highwaymen that may interfere with that." Tazuna's gaze fell on Naruto and he exclaimed, "They look like they just got out of preschool and can't even protect themselves, especially the short one." Naruto screamed, "Damn it, I just haven't hit my growth spurt yet," as he lunged at the client, but Sakura stopped him by putting her arm around his neck and driving a fist into his head. Sakura angrily said, "I'm sorry, sir, but please ignore the knucklehead here. Even if we aren't strong enough, our sensei is one of the strongest jonin in the village." Yes, Team 7 will be escorting Tazuna the bridge builder to the land of waves where his next bridge is to be built, and will stay for the duration to protect him and the bridge from any bandits or highwaymen that may interfere with that. Tazuna merely grunted, so Kakashi turned to speak to his group. "All right, Go home and pack your things and be at the gate in 3 hours. When all 4 of the ninjas vanished in shunshuns, Tazuna was only able to blink. After 3 hours, as she and her 2 teammates reached the gate, Sakura remarked, "You know, I'm really glad that I finally learned the shunshin." Sasuke looked around and grunted, but I don't see Kakashi-sensei around. Can you sense him, Naruto?" "No, he's not around." Naruto frowned as he started to extend his mind's eye of the Kagura. "You know, I had expected you to be more excited about our first C-rank mission. I mean, we spent the first weeks of our shinobi career doing chores, basically," Sakura responded. Laughed. I mean, it was boring when the only thing we did all day was teamwork exercises, but when we started actually training and Kakashi-sensei would beat the living crap out of us, the D-ranks were actually a welcome break." Sakura gave a nod. She was the one who consistently provided Naruto and Sasuke with healing. In fact, it had made her a very good medical ninjutsu practitioner. "So what do we do now?" Sasuke took out a deck of cards and said, "We could play some cards." "Sure, why not?" After 3 more hours. "He's still not here," Sakura growled, displaying her cards. Gazing down at a deck of cards, Naruto questioned, "And you're surprised by that, how?" He screamed, "Hit me," as Sasuke dealt him another card. "That's 21. Damn, Naruto, remind me to take you to a casino to clear the place out. How many wins is that now?" Sasuke replied. 42. Was Naruto's blank response. Sakura, her face twisted in contemplation, asked, "You ever get the feeling that the universe is fucking with us?" Without flinching, Sasuke remarked, "No, that's just Naruto, you'll get used to it after a while." Naruto whimpered, "I'm not that bad." Naruto caught Sasuke's attention. At last, Naruto gave in and said, "Okay, maybe a little." With a perfect deadpan, Sasuke said, "Yes, maybe a little." "How is your medical ninjutsu progressing, Sakura?" Naruto said, attempting to shift the conversation. Sakura grinned and remarked, "It's going well, especially since I always have 2 willing volunteers in the mornings. Having a medic to help you recover when you go overboard for training is convenient. Even though I dislike making plans, Naruto and I will most likely suffer injuries if we are on the front lines. Why hasn't anyone considered assigning a medic to each team?" A blonde woman sitting at a slot machine in a backward city in the Fire Country sneezed so hard that the machine hit 3 sevens as she collected her winnings. She thought, "Someone must be talking bad about me." When we return to our protagonist, he has yet another winning hand. "Now, how many victories is that?" Sakura's eye twitched as she spoke. Naruto's voice was perfectly flat as he declared, 69 wins. "How?" Sasuke shrugged and said, "You get used to it after a while." Kakashi and their client showed up after another couple won hands. Kakashi grinned and said, "I apologize for being late. I had to locate our client and ensure that he was in a suitable state for us to start our mission." He uttered a flat, "What?" in confusion at the wide-eyed stares his genin was giving him. "The first person to recover," Sakura responded. That was a legitimate excuse, actually. In fact, Kakashi appeared offended by that. "What? I'm not so horrible, am I?" The deadpan Sakura said, "Yes you are." Naruto scratched the back of his head and remarked, "Yeah, you kind of are." Sasuke grunted, You are, indeed, my eternal rival." From across the village came a voice. Kakashi looked in the direction from which the voice originated and remarked, "That was weird. Are we all prepared to depart now?" While Naruto and Sasuke held up scrolls for the kanji for storage on them, Sakura nodded as she raised her backpack. "All right, all except the back." Tazuna is flanked by Sakura and Sasuke. "Keep your senses sharp and take aim." Naruto, "Let's leave." "How long until we reach Wave?" Kakashi-sensei. Naruto, bored beyond belief, asked. As he observed the sun's position, Kakashi remarked, "We should get there before the end of the day." Naruto nodded and continued to concentrate on his eye's mind of the Kagura until he noticed 2 signatures concealed in a puddle on the road. "Well, both of them seem to be about Chunin level Sasuke and I could easily take them, but we need to find out what their goal is." The 2 demon brothers emerged from the puddle after the group had passed it. They tried to chain Kakashi right away, but were interrupted by loud chirping. Maizu heard only, "Chidori," before an arm pierced his chest, instantly killing him. Gozu exclaimed, "Maizu," as he saw his brother removed right away before he felt the tendons in both of his legs being cut. He attempted to move to attack the person who had killed his brother and collapsed to the ground. Gozu heard the Jonin say, almost as if discussing the weather, "Well, I had intended to see who their target was, but I guess just taking them out works too." After hearing a sickening crunch, which Gozu thought was the black-haired one taking his arm off his brother's chest, he heard the words, "Don't worry about that, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto's got it. Sakura, cut the muscles on his arms with your chakra scalpels and bring him over here." He grunted in agony as he felt his arm's ability to move abandon him. He was pressed up against a tree and confronted by a red-haired child who had their eyes closed. The child felt something entering his mind as he opened them and saw a red eye with a 4-point star around the pupil that was surrounded by 4 red lines. Koto Amatsukami, distinguished heavenly gods. When Kakashi noticed Gozu getting glazed, he asked his pupil, "So what did you find, Naruto?" Naruto glared at the bridge builder and said, "They were after you, Tazuna-san. Anything you want to tell us?" Panicked, Tazuna exclaimed, "Wait, why do you think they were after me?" Naruto scowled. Their client was choosing to be challenging. "I just went into his guy's mind," Naruto said as he looked at the unconscious Gozu. His brother and some guy called Zabuza are after your life. This is a B, if not a ranked mission. Now explain or we kill you and go home." Sakura shuddered when she saw Naruto's icy gaze. If anything, his Sharingan made it appear magnified. Tazuna said, "Wave is under the tyrannical hold of a businessman named Gato." Kakashi chose this moment to interrupt, saying, "Okay, I'll explain, but you have to help me." Kakashi's eyes widened as he exclaimed, "Wait, Gato? Of Gato Shipping and Transport, that Gato?" According to rumors, Gato was a very cruel person to deal with and one of the wealthiest people on the planet. Tazuna laughed. "Yeah, that's him. The little troll. The bastard may look like a legitimate businessman, but on the inside he's a cruel criminal and dictator that controls what he has through force and money. He has a chokehold on my entire country, bleeding us dry of all of our hard-earned money, leaving us with little but poverty." He breathed deeply. "This bridge I'm building is going to connect us to the mainland and break Gato's hold over our country. He knows this and will stop at nothing to kill me." He looked at Kakashi with a desperate expression. "Please, I know I lied, but you can't leave me or my country to this fate. I know I can't pay for it now, but as soon as our country is liberated we can easily make the money to pay for this. We'll even pay double or triple the amount. Just please. All we want is to be free from this accursed bastard." After considering his options and staring at Tazuna's beseeching expression, Kakashi nodded to himself before turning to face his students. "Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, this Daskan is up to you. Do we stay with the mission or go back to the village?" Naruto screamed, his icy exterior melting like snow on a sweltering summer day. "Let's do the mission. We can't let that asshole keep his hold over that country." "Yeah, as long as you can take this Zabuza guy we should be fine. Besides, I've wanted to test the Chidori in a real-life situation for a while now." Sasuke grunted in agreement. A smirk came to his lips as he concluded. Sakura smiled and added, "I agree as well. We haven't been training this past month for nothing." Naruto cut in, "Speaking of which, what do we do with this guy and his brother?" For a few moments, Kakashi closed his eye in contemplation. "I'll cut off the head of Maizu and put it in a storage scroll." "Sasuke, you just got your first kill. Are you okay?" Sasuke blinked as though he had just come to that realization. "Yeah, I'm fine." "Alright, I'll cut off Maizu's head and get Gozu's too. Just give me a minute to seal them." Team 7 spent several hours on the road. They eventually arrived at the Fire Country's shores. One man was at the oars of a small boat that was docked. The man said, "Tazuna." To them Tazuna bowed to the oarsman and said, "Thank you again for this." "No problem, just hurry up, I want to get there as quickly and quietly as possible." The oarman left after Team 7 and Tazuna boarded the boat. After arriving at an abandoned building approximately half an hour later, they docked and said goodbye to the oarman. Framing, Naruto said, "Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi slipped his Icha-Icha back into his pouch and uttered, "How strong are they and how long until we run into them?" In order to signal his teammates to prepare, Naruto said, "One is high Jonin level, the other is high to mid Chunin." Naruto continued to walk for a few more minutes before making a chain with a kunai at the end and throwing it into a bush. Guys. A bunny that had been impaled by a kunai was visible when the chain retracted. Sakura and Sasuke relaxed for a while before realizing Naruto was a censor and tensing up right away. Kakashi screamed, "Get down," and grabbed Tazuna, hurling them both to the ground. A huge spinning blade sliced through everyone and lodged itself in a tree just seconds after Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura struck the ground. A man appeared on the handle, almost severing the poor tree in half. The man chuckled ominously, well, what do we have here? A bunch of green genin out on a mission." As he removed his headband to reveal his Sharingan, Kakashi remarked, "Momochi Zabuza, a ranked missing nin from Kirigakure known for his mastery of the silent killing technique. Your reputation precedes you, demon of the mist." And you yours Sharingan Kakashi. Zabuza jumped down from his enormous sword's handle. Kakashi. What do you want Zabuza? Zabuza gestured to Tazuna, who was occupied with shrinking under the missing nin's icy gaze, saying, I think you already know what I'm here for. Hand him over and we won't have any problems. Kakashi stepped in front of the missing nin to absorb the brunt of the murderous intent and said, I can't do that. Zabuza landed on a lake. After leaping back he laughed and waved his hands, saying, I was hoping you'd say that Sweden. Kirigakure no Jutsu, water release. Hidden in the mist jutsu. All sight was suffocated by a mist that rose from the water. Be careful, you three. Zabuza is an expert at silent killing. He can kill you in this fog without even seeing you. Be ready for anything and maintain your senses sharp. Oh, so you fought blind people before, don't you, Kakashi? 8 points. Zabuza's voice reverberated around them. Lungs, liver, jugular, kidneys, heart, subclavian artery, larynx, and spine. Which should I target? How are you going to hit any of those with that big-ass sword of yours? I mean, can you really do anything other than chop our heads off or slice us in half? Naruto interrupted, his face wearing an oddly inquisitive expression. I doubted if he really was a master of silent killing, then he would use like a knife or something. According to Naruto's pink-haired teammate, maybe he's overcompensating for something. You know Kakashi, I think I'm going to kill your genin first, Zabuza said, his eyebrows appearing to twitch in the mist as Kakashi's perspiration fell. Kakashi trailed off as he went through 3 hand seals, gripping his left hand with his right to create a rakery. Lightning cutter in his left hand and drawing a kunai in his right. You know, if I were anyone else I couldn't blame you, but since I'm their sensei, he said. Sparks flew as Zabuza blocked Kakashi's rakery swing with the flat of his blade, which seemed to be random. Zabuza jumped back into the mist, his eyes wide as the rakery started tunneling through his sword. How? As he charged into the mist, Kakashi remarked, it's quite easy. This mist may obstruct my vision and impede my hearing, but it doesn't obstruct a certain other sense. Zabuza realized he might be beyond his capabilities when he used his Kubokirabocho, decapitating carving knife, to block Kakashi's rakery and grunted as it carved another gash into his sword. Even though Kakashi and Zabuza were both ranked in the bingo book, Kakashi had been training with his genin for the past month, and the two of them could likely defeat a most powerful jonin as a result. Kakashi reverted to his former status as an S-rank threat while serving as Anbu captain. Zabuza, retreating, cleared the fog. It was now only depleting his chakra. A 5th figure was seen bound in one of the genin's arms as the fog surrounding Kakashi's genin began to clear. When Zabuza saw Haku's bound form, his face went white. Line break before Zabuza was chased by Kakashi. As he watched Zabuza and Kakashi battle in the trees, Naruto tensed up as his mind's eye of the Kagura detected yet another signature. It was better safe than sorry, but he wasn't sure whose side they were on. Guys, Naruto started out by saying, there's a signature in the trees. I'm going to go neutralize it. Sakura put up a genjutsu over us so that they don't just attack the client. Sasuke, if you hear fighting, come and help me. Sakura moved her hands to the side and used a low-level cloaking genjutsu to encircle herself, Sasuke, and Tazuna, while nodding slightly to let him know they had received his message. Using it to create a shadow clone in the foliage, he Kawaramide, replaced the body, and started to creep behind the signature. Haku was nervously perspiring behind her mask. It would be easy. Her master had promised simply remove the bridge builder after chopping off Kakashi's head while his Sharingan was neutralized. After their sensei passed away, the genin would most likely flee in fear. However, this plan quickly took a turn for the worse. Even though no plan can withstand contact, Zabuza was being easily defeated by Kakashi, and the genin team had vanished along with their target. It's likely that they chose to simply let their sensei catch up after witnessing their sensei brutally beating Zabuza. Haku was so engrossed that she failed to see someone approaching from behind. When she finally noticed, the individual had already given her a back slap. She jumped away from her assailant and observed that the person had strange red eyes, spiky bright red hair, and a somewhat feminine face. Haku fell to the ground as she felt her chakra abruptly depart. As soon as the hunter nin halted his movement, Naruto sighed. In reality, the seal he placed on their back was made up of 2 seals that were woven together. The first was a chaining seal, and the second was a seal that totally suppressed a person's chakra. In essence, it caused the person wearing the seal to become unconscious if they were too far away from the sealer. It served as a tracking seal as well. He made some chakra chains and started tying up the unconscious nin. Returning to the present, Zabuza swore to himself his ass was being kicked. There was no possibility that Gato would send any backup. After his backup was discovered, he was willing to fight to the death, but he didn't want to jeopardize the life of his surrogate daughter because his pride demanded that he do so. But if I did that, they would just kill Haku, damn it. Zabuza threw his blade to the ground and raised his hands, saying, "Kakashi, I surrender," until he saw his team with a captive. Kakashi appeared taken aback. Kakashi nodded, took Zabuza's blade, and used ninja wire to bind him. Kakashi raised an eyebrow as though to inquire about the identity of their captive as he and the now departed Zabuza approached their group. Naruto shrugged and said, "I don't know, but I felt her hiding in the forest." Zabuza glared at Naruto and said, "Wait, Haku binds her chest, how did you know that she was a girl?" For a moment, Naruto's cheeks turned red. "Well, I had to tie her up." Zabuza snarled, "Brat, I would kill you right now if I wasn't bound." Sakura placed a finger on her chin and said, "Wait, wouldn't you be trying to kill us anyway if you weren't tied up?" For a brief moment, Zabuza blinked and then resumed his glare at Naruto. "Yes, but I would make his death especially painful." After only 15 minutes of Zabuza's presence, Naruto has already ensnared him in his web. "Tazuna-san, how long until we get to your home?" Kakashi asked, shaking his head and turning to face Tazuna as he lowered his headband. Tazuna pointed toward his home and remarked, "It's about 10 minutes from here." Kakashi nodded, and his genin followed him as he led Zabuza to Tazuna's house. "Gado's hiding place, damn it," was one midget's irate exclamation. "Goddamn it everything, that idiot Zabuza and his lapdog got themselves caught, now I'm going to have to hire him." Gado sighed and rubbed his forehead before pulling out and lighting a cigar. Everything was going to be ideal. Zabuza would battle the team until he was exhausted. Gado would have his bandits kill Zabuza and take the bounty on his head after he returned from killing the bridge builder. In any case, he had no intention of paying the missing nin. Since Zabuza and his dog were apprehended, they would most likely decide to shield the bridge builder from harm. Gado took out a notepad and jotted down some notes on paper before handing it to one of his runners, who promptly departed. "I don't like calling him because he charges a fucking arm and a leg," he said. "But at least he gets his shit done." Line break. At Tazuna's home later, while Tazuna, his family, and Team 7 were having dinner, Zabuza and Haku were restrained and on the ground. "So are you guys just going to leave us tied up here until after you finish your mission?" Zabuza asked. Ignoring Tsunami's glare, a masked Kakashi who had already finished his meal and pulled out his Icha replied, "Actually, yeah, that was the plan." Zabuza was famished and asked, "Can we at least get some food?" His pride was already starved to death. As he picked up a plate and approached the unconscious girl, Naruto exclaimed, "I call feeding the girl. One of you guys can feed Musclehead." Everyone stared at Sakura as she stood up and started to leave, asking, "What?" He said, "One of you guys feed him. As far as I'm concerned, that means I can leave." She shrugged and went, and Sasuke stood up to follow suit. "I've got to. Go. Brood, yeah, that's right, killing Itachi, avenging my clan and all that jazz." Tazuna and Kakashi exchanged scowls after witnessing Sasuke vanish in a shunshin. As soon as he finished eating, Inari had slipped away. Naruto set the plate of food aside and walked over to the girl who was unconscious. He let some of her chakra return to her by placing his hand on the spot where the seal was on her back. The girl's eyes opened with a start, and her first instinct was to flip whoever was holding her back, but she was unable to do so because she was fully restrained by ninja wire. She looked up and saw her captor's face. Naruto grinned and said, "Hey there, my name's Uchiha Uzumaki. Naruto, what's yours?" "Haku," the girl said, still a little dazed from her chakra's continued restriction. "Where are we?" Naruto jerked his thumb over to where an equally eye-twitching Kakashi was feeding an eye-twitching Zabuza, saying, "Well, we are in the bridge builder's house. Zabuza is over there being fed by Sensei." All of it suddenly rushed back to her. The ambush failed, and the person in front of her knocked her out. Naruto simply held up his hands in an attempt to appease Haku after noticing that her eyes briefly widened before narrowing. "Hey, now you're the ones who attacked us. Once the bridge is finished and our mission is done, you guys are free to be on your way, but until then we have to make sure you don't kill the bridge builder." Once Naruto had finished explaining, he moved the plate and spoon to his side and started feeding Haku. She was so hungry that she finally gave in after initially refusing. Naruto went outside after feeding Haku after noticing Sasuke on the roof. As he landed on Tazuna's roof, he noticed his duck-haired brother staring off into space. Naruto approached him and simply stood next to him. Naruto chose to strike up a conversation after a few minutes of silence. "So what's bothering you?" Sasuke initially just kept staring off into space, and Naruto assumed he wouldn't respond, but in the end, "It's just earlier today, my first kill." Naruto raised an eyebrow and remarked, "I never knew you to be one who would be squeamish about something like that." It's not that I feel bad about it, it's because I don't feel bad about it. I never really stopped to think about it because I had been focused on guarding Tazuna all day, but now that I have my first kill, it was just something I think I'm supposed to feel bad, but I don't. Even when I saw the look of hopelessness as Maizu died, I felt a little bad, but other than that, nothing. Sighing, Naruto ran his hand through his fiery, I don't know, I don't even know what that would feel like yet. I mean, I hadn't had my first kill yet, but when I do, I'd like it to be for someone I care about. I'd try some other things first, but if that doesn't help, then no, I wouldn't feel bad. I think as long as when you kill someone it's to protect, then it's okay. After a few more minutes of silence, Sasuke simply laughed and shook his head. You know, you really suck at speeches, Naruto said, somewhat offended. Hey, I'm trying to help you out here. I don't need you turning into some brooding emo, or something similar. I would say if I turned into a brooding emo you would become a loud-mouthed retard, but that's already true, isn't it? Hey. As he entered, Sasuke gave Naruto a shoulder pat and said, never change Naruto, never change. What's with him? The following day, when Haku noticed their captor muttering as he studied an odd design on a piece of paper, she asked, what's with him? Zabuza remarked, probably trying to find some way to make sure we behave, as he and Haku were restrained by blue chains that glowed from the redhead's back. Grumbling, Naruto folded the paper in half. Damn straight I am, we can't just watch you guys all day, so I'm trying to find some way to stop you from trying to kill us. At this point I haven't got much besides a kill switch if any of us die. Simply shaking his head, Zabuza said, I don't understand why you guys didn't just kill us. Do you want us to kill you? No, but it would be more convenient for you guys. As he picked up another piece of paper, Naruto shook his head and said, that's not a good reason to kill someone, even if you two are willing to work for a scumbag like Gato. I assume you have your reasons. There was silence for a few more moments. At last, Naruto questioned, why are you two working for Gato anyway? What's it to you? Grunted Zabuza. As it turned out, the Ice Maiden had not stopped glaring at him since they woke up this morning. Just wondering, even though Haku-chan hasn't stopped glaring at me, you two seem like decent people. Zabuza ultimately made the decision to respond, saying, I want to fund a rebellion in Kiri. He didn't anticipate a nod of understanding from the red-haired boy who was holding them in chains, out of all the possible responses. That's good. Well, after this I wish you luck in killing that monster. He gives people like us a bad reputation. That red hair, he couldn't be killing that monster. He must mean Yagura. Wait, people like us. With hesitation, Zabuza said, Are you? Naruto merely gave a small nod. Haku finally raised his voice and said, Zabuza-sama, what do you mean? Zabuza glanced at Naruto as though to get his consent. After getting a slight nod again, Zabuza turned to face Haku. Haku, you know about the man we are trying to kill, Yagura the Yondaime Mizukage, and the Jinchuriki of the Sanbi no Kyodai game, three-tailed great turtle. Well, about 12 years ago the Kyuubi no Yoko, nine-tailed demon fox, attacked Konoha. It was said to have been defeated by the Yondaime Hokage at the cost of his life, but the Yondaime was a seal master. Haku's eyes grew wide as she made the mental connections. The Kyuubi no Yoko had been sealed into a new Jinchuriki by the Yondaime Hokage. Yagura was also a Jinchuriki, and Naruto, the boy, claimed that Yagura was damaging the reputation of those who were similar to them. Wide-eyed, Haku whispered, You're the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. There was an awkward silence for the remainder of the day. 1 week later, after everyone had finished their meal, Kakashi abruptly said, Okay, my cute little genin, we need to do something about Gato. Sakura asked, What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? In an attempt to clarify the other two genins' confusion. It means what it sounds like, Sakura-chan. In order to make sure the bridge is safe, we have to take out Gato himself. If we don't, then Gato might just wait until we leave and then use his thugs to take control of the bridge. This isn't a problem we can deal with by just cutting off some branches. We have to go for the roots, Naruto clarified. Team 7's other members simply stared at him in response. What? I can be smart sometimes too. Kakashi started to say, Anyway, you're right, Naruto, that's why I want all of you to try to find out where Gato is. But Zabuza cut him off. I can tell you where he is. The bound swordsman caught the attention of Four Heads. Sasuke questioned, Why would you do that? To save some of your time. Think of it as a thank you for letting us live. Kakashi, still alert, said, All right, well, where is he? Zabuza shifted slightly in his chains and grunted, The little rat's probably holed up in his hideout, Haku, and I had to go there when we first received the job. I can take you there. Sasuke simply squinted his eyes. What's to stop you from just betraying us? Only one of you needs to go, the rest of you can guard Haku and my Kabikirabocho. Decapitating carving knife. If you haven't noticed, I do care for them. Kakashi thought about this for a while. Alright, Naruto, you go with Zabuza tomorrow to the hideout. When you get there, create some shadow clones and have them infiltrate the place. If you see the opportunity to capture Gato without killing him, take it, but until then just scout for information. The following day, once everyone has departed, the clone of Naruto was bored. He was made by his creator to keep Haku's chains in place and prevent the proximity seal from breaking, but it was incredibly dull. And the clone said, "Why are you glaring at me? I'm just a clone." Haku said, his glare unwavering, "Well, your original did capture me and my master, also you've kept me chained here for a week. Okay, 1, you guys attacked us first, and 2, why do you call him your master?" "Because I am his tool for him to accomplish his ambitions." For several minutes, the Naruto clone simply gazed at her, her soul seemingly penetrating the Sharingan's eyes. At last, he simply turned away and shook his head. With a raised eyebrow, Haku remarked, "I feel you disapprove of how I see myself." With a strange expression on his face, the clone said, "It's just, how can you see yourself like that? What happened to make you put so little value in yourself? When I was little, I lived in a small village that had just been the battlefield of a small war." Haku started. After the war ended, memories of the horrific battles still lingered in the minds of the people, and those with bloodlines quickly became feared and hated for their abilities, out of concern that their existence would only bring more war. She explained to the boy, feeling the need to defend herself for some reason. "My parents were simple farmers, but my mother had the ice release bloodline. She hid it from my father in hopes that our little family would never be torn apart, but it wasn't meant to be." This is when Haku's eyes started to water. "One day I discovered my bloodline. My mother immediately reprimanded me, but it was too late. My father had already seen it. He gathered a mob and killed my mother. He was about to kill me, but my bloodline manifested and killed him and the mob." Naruto was unsure of what to do when the girl started crying. He wasn't much better than his orange-wearing canon counterpart, but he was more socially adept when he cried. He chose to rely solely on what Makoto would do for him. Naruto put an arm around the sobbing girl, broke the chains, drew her to his chest, and started massaging her back. Along with Naruto and Zabuza, with the chain around the Kiri swordsman's back, Naruto questioned Zabuza from behind, "How much longer until we get there?" "We are almost there, just a few more minutes." Indeed, after walking for a few more minutes, they discovered a sizable warehouse. Naruto made a cross sign with his fingers and said, "All right, Kage Bunshin." Naruto and Zabuza started to return to Tezuna's house after creating 30 clones, all of whom instantly changed into tiny insects and rodents and went into the warehouse. After a few minutes of silent travel, Zabuza and Naruto grew bored and decided to have a brief conversation. "So, what's it like being a Jinchuriki?" After a brief pause, Naruto resumed his stride. "I don't know. I mean, I'm not your average Jinchuriki. I had a family and my biju's not all that bad, but I still had to deal with the hatred from the villagers. If it wasn't for my adopted family, I might have gone insane." As he walked, Zabuza appeared to be lost in thought. "Brat, if you did go insane, not that I think you were, but if you did, would it be a gradual process or would you suddenly one day snap?" Turning, Naruto gave Zabuza a strange look and said, "I don't know. Why is that what happened with Yagura?" "Yeah, Yagura was a nice guy before the bloodline purges. He used to be my teammate and would always talk about making his village love him and finally accept him. And then finally the day came when he was selected to be the Mizukage." The man cried tears of joy. Zabuza replied with fondness. "But then, one day everything changed. He suddenly became a shut-in and ordered the bloodline purges. I had heard that there was a coup being planned and I decided to join. Since he was my old teammate, I figured it was my responsibility, you know. But when I finally got to his office..." Captivated by the tale, Naruto questioned, What happened?" "He was just sitting there, with a blank look on his face. It looked almost like he was in a genjutsu, but if he was in one the Sanbi would have broken him free, but it still looked like he was in a genjutsu." The Kyuubi who had been inside the seal listening started to make connections. You can't use a genjutsu on a Jinchuriki who is using his tailed beast unless additionally, the tailed beast was in a genjutsu, and the only thing that can do so is. Unaware of his tailed beast's thoughts, Naruto was curious about Zabuza's story's conclusion. "Then why didn't you kill him and end the purges?" "Like I said, Yagura was just sitting there, but I was driven off by one of the other 7 swordsmen, Kisame." Zabuza sighed. Naruto, ask Zabuza if there was a man with a mask with one eye hole there. Uncertain of what his tenant was requesting, Naruto remarked, "Zabuza, the Kyuubi wanted me to ask you if there was a man with a one-eyed mask there." Before his eyes widened, Zabuza's eyes crinkled up as though he was trying to recall something. "There was. Why? What does it mean?" Naruto waved his hands and yelled, "Hold on. Hold on." As Zabuza stood up in front of him, "Let me ask Kyuubi." "Kyuubi, what's happening? Who is the mask-wearing man? He is the one who killed your mother and made me attack Konoha." After a brief moment of widening, Naruto's face became unusually composed. "How is that related to Yagura? A Jinchuriki working together with his tailed beast can't be put under a Genjutsu. The reason for this is because if the Jinchuriki falls under a Genjutsu, then the tailed beast can just disrupt its Jinchuriki's chakra and release the Genjutsu. The only way for a Jinchuriki to fall under a Genjutsu is for both the Jinchuriki and the tailed beast to fall under the Genjutsu, and the only thing that can put a Biju under a Genjutsu is the Sharingan," Naruto said. In closing, Naruto returned from his introspection to find Zabuza staring at him with anticipation. Naruto closed his eyes and took a moment to compose his thoughts before he started to piece together what he wanted to say to Zabuza. The tailed beast must first be placed under a Genjutsu in order to place a Jinchuriki under one. Second, only the Sharingan has the power to subdue a tailed beast under a Genjutsu. Third, the masked man was also responsible for his parents' deaths in the Kyuubi attack. Naruto opened his eyes and inhaled deeply. "Alright Zabuza, I'm going to ask you to let me get through my full explanation before I answer your questions, is that okay?" Naruto held up 3 fingers and started ticking them off after Zabuza nodded. "First, while it's true that a Jinchuriki working with their tailed beast can't be put under a Genjutsu, if the Biju is put under a Genjutsu, then the Jinchuriki becomes vulnerable. However, that brings me to my second point. The only thing that can put a tailed beast in a Genjutsu is the Sharingan, like mine. Third and finally, the masked man I asked you about, he was also the person behind the Kyuubi attack, and the one that killed my parents," Naruto concluded by spinning his Sharingan with rage. "So you think this masked person is the one who caused Yagura to suddenly change?" replied Zabuza. Naruto gave a nod. "Yeah, so what are you going to do now?" Zabuza was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do? You said this guy killed your mom and dad. Even if you were pretty damn nice compared to most shinobi, I don't think anyone would let that go." "You're right," Naruto said as Sharingan continued to spin. "However, when he attacked Konoha, he was after the Kyuubi. Since I have the Kyuubi, that means he will eventually come for me, and when he does, I'll be ready." When Naruto and Zabuza eventually made it back to Tazuna's house, Naruto remarked, "You never answered my question. What are you going to do now?" I think after this I'll stick with you if this guy is going to be coming for you. I want to get my chunk of flesh for what the bastard did to my teammate in my village. Do you think you could get me or Haku into Konoha?" Nodded. "I should be able to. As the last of the Uzumaki clan, I'm technically the head. I can put you two under the protection of my clan. I just have to confirm it with Kakashi-sensei." "Well, since we are on the same side now, can you get these chains off me?" At Tazuna's house later after dinner, Sakura, a little afraid of Zabuza, who was sitting on the couch polishing his sword, asked, "So why is the big man who tried to kill us free now?" As though it were entirely normal, Sasuke stated, "He was befriended by Naruto." In fact, Kakashi looked up at that and stopped reading his Icha. "What? It actually happens a lot with him. After he fights with someone, they become his friend. Hell, I didn't like Naruto when he was first adopted, but after we fought we began to bond pretty well." "You didn't like me?" Naruto asked, turning to Sasuke with teary puppy dog eyes after not giving it much thought. "You are K." Sasuke shrank back. Naruto's Bishonen appearance allowed him to get away with it quite nicely, whereas most men couldn't get away with having puppy dog eyes. Strangely enough, when he did it, his Sharingan vanished, giving his eyes the appearance of a naturally red pupil. "So why are you not trying to kill us anymore?" Sakura asked Zabuza as the puppy dog eyes of doom attacked Sasuke. After polishing his sword, Zabuza leaned it against the wall and grunted. "Let's just say me and the brat found a common enemy. Where is Haku anyway?" Instead of using his puppy dog eyes to attack Sasuke, Naruto turned to Zabuza and said, "She fell asleep, so my clone carried her to a room." He did not mention that she sobbed herself to sleep while holding his clone. As the sleeping girl held him like a giant teddy bear, the said, poor clone had yet to dispel. After being silent until now, Tazuna finally said, "Wait, why aren't you guys trying to kill each other anymore?" Kakashi responded after already turning back to his Icha, "Because it was never personal. It was just two groups of shinobi doing their job that came into conflict. Since our jobs are no longer conflicting, there is no point in fighting anymore." Tazuna nodded, glanced at his sake cup, shrugged, and took another gulp. Everyone left to resume their own activities. The following day, Kakashi observed the bridge constructor. After that, Sasuke went to train. Sakura conversed with Tsunami, while Naruto spent time with Haku and Zabuza. Granted, when I say Zabuza and Haku, I mean that Haku blushed whenever Naruto glanced in her general direction because of Zabuza. So why did you kill all the graduates in your class? Replied Naruto. Well, you probably don't know this, but Yagura and I were pretty good friends back in the day. On graduation day the whole class was basically pummeling him and I just lost control. How did you kill the entire class though? Growing up on the streets taught me to be good at stealth. By the time they realized someone was picking them off I had already killed half of them. Damn, you must have been really good friends with Yagura, Naruto replied. Grasping his Kabikirabocho, Zabuza snarled, yeah, that's why I want to murder the guy who messed with his head. Naruto turned to face the Ice Maiden, who was still flushed. Hey Haku-chan, why do you keep blushing? Are you sick or something? He asked. Haku waved her hand and said, it's nothing, but her thoughts were telling her something else entirely, and I started crying in front of him. It's really embarrassing. Naruto smiled empathetically and said, oh, well, I just wanted to say thanks for sharing with me yesterday. I kind of understand where you're coming from. Haku cocked her head at this. What do you mean, Naruto-san? I mean, being hated for something out of your control. I understand what it feels like. In my home village people don't like me very much either. Because you're the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. Yeah, I mean, even though it's not really our fault, the people just made us a scapegoat so that they could have something to blame. Even though we aren't what they see us as, they still blame us for things we didn't do, Naruto replied with a tearful expression on his face. Haku couldn't suppress a small smile. I guess I've discovered a kindred spirit. There was a brief pause before Zabuza asked the question that had been bothering him for the past 3 days. Why do you and that other kid always have your Sharingan active? That can't be good for your reserves. For a moment, Naruto's face darkened. These aren't my eyes. What do you mean? Zabuza asked, raising a non-existent eyebrow at this point. In a loving remembrance of Shisui, Naruto remarked, when I was little a incident caused me to lose my eyes. These eyes are implanted from my dead brother. Wait, so you basically have to deal with the strain from 2 implanted Sharingan all the time? Damn, how much chakra do you have? Naruto chuckled and shook his head regretfully, saying, way too much. So what about the other kid? Are his implanted too? No, Sasuke's are natural. Let's just say he's trying to unlock the next level. What do you mean? Naruto simply tapped his nose and chuckled. Alongside Sasuke, with his eyes closed, Sasuke shaped and fed chakra to his Sharingan while seated in front of a lake. He sensed it. He was very near. He might not possess as much chakra as Naruto, but he had honed his chakra control over the previous few years to a fine level. Sasuke had more chakra control than the majority of medic nins because his elements were the most dangerous to control. It was also partly his strategy to keep up with Naruto, who could typically defeat his younger brother without using the Kyuubi. Lightning would shock you into unconsciousness if you couldn't control it. Similarly, fire could burn his throat or even his stomach if he lost control, perhaps if he had a means of igniting and controlling flames outside his body. Sasuke opened his eyes, sensing a change, and looked into the lake at his reflection. When he saw 2 pupils staring back at him with 3 red intersecting ellipses on a black background, he couldn't help but smirk. With Sakura while assisting Tsunami around the house, Sakura reflected idly on how much she had changed since attending the academy. She was once a dead weight and a worthless fangirl, but now she was the team medic, an essential member of a frontline squad like theirs who wasn't too bad at hand-to-hand duties. She stopped swooning over Sasuke, and upon reflection, Sakura saw how foolishly shallow she had become. The irony was that she had been fangirling over a fictitious character that Sasuke had made up to avoid the village interfering with his and Naruto's development. Even though there was still some residual love, it was a side item rather than the main reason she became a ninja in the first place. After completing the assignment Tsunami had given her, Sakura sat down on the couch and reflected on how she typically healed people because of her superior chakra control over nearly every other medic in the hospital. She started researching a field that, as far as she was aware, no other medic had ever worked in. Regrowth. She came up with the concept of regeneration while observing Naruto recover from one of his numerous 3-way fights with Sasuke, Kakashi, and himself. Naruto would never leave scars, and any harm would be repaired without leaving any evidence behind. Regeneration would stimulate the cells and cause them to repair themselves, whereas the majority of medical ninjutsu concentrated on using chakra to directly repair the damage compared to basic medical ninjutsu. It was a more comprehensive healing. On the other hand, making a mistake would be much simpler. Even though she could use her medical ninjutsu to heal a single mistake that would cause cancer, it would require even more chakra. She was devoid of chakra. When Tsunami called for her again, Sakura was startled out of her reverie. With Kakashi. Kakashi paused his Icha Icha reading to consider the mission. Even though Zabuza joined their side later, his presence would likely cause it to be bumped up to an A-rank mission. Recalling the battle with Zabuza, Kakashi was somewhat relieved that he had made the decision to be more involved in his Genin's training. His previous statement was accurate, he was not getting better. All he was doing was getting back what he had lost. Kakashi had suffered from the years away from Anbu, and instead of being the S-rank threat that Anbu Captain Inu Dog once was, he was only listed as an A-ranked Kakashi of the Sharingan in the bingo book. Even though the difference between S-rank and A-rank was only 1, it was still quite apparent. Instead of being an upper S-rank like Uchiha Itachi, Kakashi was only a lower mid-class S-rank even in his prime. Even though Kakashi's strength was only at lower S-rank at the time, he had already thrashed Zabuza during the brief time they had been fighting because an S-rank could easily defeat an A-rank. Kakashi idly observed that the bridge would be completed in roughly 2 weeks while observing its progress. As he turned a page of his Icha Icha, Kakashi thought, the mission is going so well. So why am I unable to overcome this sense of dread? The following week seemed to go by quickly. Gato grew closer to Haku and Zabuza, and Naruto's clones didn't report any unusual activity from his hiding place, Haku in particular, as both of them suffer from being held accountable for circumstances beyond their control after training. Sasuke started producing Chidori variations while Kakashi oversaw the bridge's construction. Sakura assisted around the house and protected Tsunami when she went shopping. That sense of dread persisted throughout the week in Kakashi and only seemed to get stronger with each passing moment. Zabuza eventually started to sense it as well. Up until one night, everything appeared to be going smoothly as the bridge was being built steadily. Why do you even try? Inari, whom everyone had been ignoring up until this point, whined with angst. Try what? Inquired Naruto, trying to get bigger. Inari screamed. You know what I mean. Gato is just going to kill you all. For a few seconds, Naruto laughed, and then he started laughing. His voice was harsher this time as he demanded, what's so funny? Naruto wiped a single tear from his eye and laughed, you are a child. Naruto interrupted Inari before he could attempt to bitch him out. Kid, telling us that we're going to die is like telling your Gramps over there that he's going to get a hangover from drinking too much. The only difference is we don't know when we'll die, while your Gramps knows damn well when he'll get a hangover. He continued to laugh. Kid, we're ninja. Dying is a part of the job description. We are born and raised to fight, kill and die for our friends and family. Naruto's smile became somewhat of a glare. However, thinking we'll die to some little troll like Gato is insulting. That bastard doesn't have anything going for him but his money. From what your Gramps has told us, the dude is as short as you are. He has nothing to fight us with himself. He hires his power. Suddenly feeling a little out of his league in the argument, Inari started, then. We have 2 A-rank shinobi. There is nothing Gato could do. Even if he were to send an army, we would destroy them. Me and my brother here could probably kill most of them by just looking them in the eye. Gato has nothing but some money, and unless he hires some S-rank psychos, there is nothing he can do to us. Inari's expression was one of shock at how openly his convictions had been disregarded. He clenched his teeth and cursed the blonde jerk in his head at Naruto. A ninja like you who probably has had it good all his life. What do you know? Oh. Inari was silenced by a concentrated blast of murderous intent. Who do you think you are? You have no right to come in here and talk that way to us. Do you have any idea how badly we've suffered under that bastard's rule? Unconsciously using some of the Kyuubi's chakra, an enraged Naruto snarled at the boy, shut up. Brat, Naruto said, whiskers forming, fangs lengthening and a foxtail coming out from his pants. You come in here while we are just doing our jobs and begin bitching to us just because you lost someone you cared about. Do you want to know how many fucks I give? None. Zero? You pain means nothing to me, but that's not what makes me angry. What makes me angry is that you dare belittle the pain we have been through. My parents died on the day I was born, and then when I was adopted, everyone except my brother, Sasuke, was taken away again. I, who had not known love for the first 3 years of my life, was giving it before it was taken away. The worst part is that I know that there are other people who have had worse lives than me just because their villages were greedy fucking bastards and wanted more power, but you were here just writing their pain off as nothing just because you were hurt a little. Grow up, kid, because if you don't then this world will eat you alive. Naruto walked over to the door before he turned around. All of you stay away, I don't want to accidentally hurt any of you. Naruto walked out, slamming the door. There was a brief period of silence before the earth trembled and the sound of destruction broke the stillness. After dropping his sake cup, Tazuna eventually recovered his voice and said, was that all true? Kakashi put his Icha Icha back in his pocket and signed, yes, especially the last part. I can't give you too many details, but that all has happened to Naruto, and those people he was walking about do exist. They're, for lack of a better term, human weapons. Kakashi got up and started to go upstairs. I would recommend not bothering him for a few days. The following day, in a clearing in the forest, rays of sunlight struck him in the face and pierced the foliage, waking Naruto. Naruto groggily looked around while rubbing his head. What happened? The little brat ran his mouth off and you got really angry. What a damned kid he is, discussing topics he doesn't even comprehend. That is one of the things I hate most about humanity, their ignorance and holier-than-thou attitude. There are a lot of things about people that you detest. Well, there are so many things to hate. Disregarding his tenant's caustic reply, Naruto extended and involuntarily extended his eyes mind of the Kagura. Prior to his detecting them with his eyes wide in fear, Naruto grabbed everything he could from the two hideous signatures he sensed on his way to Gato's hiding place. One exuded an aura of pure disgust, it had an unholy taint and smelled of decay and death. The second aura was equally, if not more, awful. After concentrating a little more, Naruto discovered that it was actually 5 distinct auras contained within the same body. Rather than the initial impression of one enormous aura, he concentrated more on how old it felt. Even though it had the sensation of fire, wind, water, earth, and lightning, it could have easily been a century or 200 years old. Naruto attempted to calm himself as he felt them enter Gato's hiding place. They might not be available for hire, perhaps they were going to kill them because they had just irritated Gato. Yes, that. Naruto hurried as quickly as he could to Tazuna's house after receiving the memories from one of his shadow clones in the hiding place. Gato's hiding place. A short while ago, 2 figures moved through Gato's hiding place. They were both dressed in red clouds and black cloaks. One was a man who slicked back his sliver hair and carried a huge tri-bladed scythe on his back. The second man had a mask over most of his face, with the exception of his eyes, which had green pupils and a pink sclera. The silver-haired one knocked on the door before going inside, and while the other went into the office, he waited outside and swore bitterly that he could not sacrifice anyone for his god. Gato, it's been a while since you called for my services. Yes, it has, Kakuzu.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.